Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen crashes my car because she wouldn't stop texting. I'm 25, male. My little sister, who's 18, let's call her Christy, has recently gotten her license. She obviously thinks she's an incredible driver and can handle a car no matter what. After only 4 months of driving, she's already become one of those people who put their phone in their lap to be able to look at messages and access it quickly while they're driving. It drives us all insane, to be honest, and I and other family members have talked to her about it multiple times. It goes in one ear and out the other. Yesterday, she did it again while driving my car when we were out getting groceries. She had been distracted for almost the whole drive and even continued to look at her phone after a brief break when I told her to stop it. When she was about to roll into a parking spot, she probably got a message and looked down at the phone. I noticed that she was about to ram into a lantern, and when I was sure that she wouldn't cause damage to any other vehicles, I decided to just let her run into it instead of intervening. It was a huge shock to her, and she just sat there completely still for like 15 seconds, processing what had just happened. It wasn't until I said, "Will you learn to leave that phone alone now?" that she spoke again. The first thing she said was, "Why didn't you tell me?" in an absolutely baffled tone, and I told her straight up that I didn't tell her so she'd learn a lesson. She was absolutely livid and tried to push all the blame onto me for not intervening, but I told her it would have been the same outcome had I not been there, and that ultimately she, as a driver, is responsible for not only her, but also other passengers' safety. Christy was absolutely gobsmacked that she messed around and found out, even more so when I told her that she would have to account for half the damage that she caused in the accident that the insurance wouldn't even cover. In total, that was just shy of $200. Blown out light, bent bumper, and a dent in the hood, plus a few scratches and the damage to the pole of the lantern. She went completely wild, but I told her she's lucky I'm not making her pay for everything since she was driving while being on the phone. A few days after the insurance gave me the sum and I told Christy what she owes me, which she paid me immediately, she told me that apparently because of this, she won't be able to go on a trip with her friends and that I'm a massive jerk. She also added she would have learned her lesson otherwise too. I personally doubt that she would have, and honestly, distracted drivers are the worst. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I applaud you for being willing to sacrifice your vehicle to help your sister learn a hugely important lesson. The fright, coupled with the very real consequence of being responsible for damages, should resonate with her for a while. I hope she will also reflect on what else might have happened, such as if that lantern had been a pedestrian. I think I'm going to have to end things with the man I love because I don't want kids. I'm 30 female and my boyfriend is 34 male. We've been together for the last 4 years. Our first date was basically our whole life stories and just talking about everything and anything, whether it be deep or not. I would say most of our relationship has been this way. Even when we fight, which has maybe happened a couple of times, we'll take a break and regroup once emotions settle. When we disagree, we talk it through. He looks at me like I'm the most beautiful person he's ever seen. He constantly tells me how lucky he is to have me and how I deserve the world. We both love to cook and clean for the other person, so we always have different games set up, and the loser gets to relax while the winner gets to pamper the loser. I know it sounds weird, but it works for us. I love this man so much, and I know he loves me just as much. Now here's the problem. A couple months into us dating, kids got brought up. Communication is super important to me, and him, so I told him I didn't want kids. He thought I was joking because all of my friends and siblings have kids at this point, and I'm the fun tia, auntie. I even put together parties for the kids and fun themed days when I'm having one-on-one time with them. I do love kids, but I don't want any of my own. I explained that and he said, "Well, maybe you haven't met the right guy." I had to sit him down and explain that while I do believe people can change, he cannot be with me expecting my opinion about kids to change. He needs to take my not wanting kids at face value instead of hoping that I will change my mind, because what if I don't change my mind? I asked him to think it through for a week or two, and then we can circle back to the topic, because at this point, we're thinking about being official. But if kids were that important to him, then we needed to stop now before it gets much harder down the line. He told me later that kids are not that important to him and that he can see a future without kids. Fast forward to a month ago. His parents and some extended family were visiting for my boyfriend's brother's wedding. We're in the US and his family's from Eastern Europe. I've always gotten along with his parents and his brother's now wife. His parents will visit a couple times a year and have always been so kind and thoughtful. At the wedding reception, I was being introduced to all of the family. Eventually, someone asked when my boyfriend and I were getting married, and my boyfriend just winked at the question because he knew I already knew that he was planning to propose soon. He just asked way too many ring-related questions since he knows I hate diamonds, but wasn't sure the direction he should go since I barely wear rings. He could propose to me with a ring pop for all I care. Later at one point, one of his cousins asked how I would feel about my future kids learning their native language, to which I responded, "Oh, I don't want kids, but I'm actually learning the language myself." There were a few members of the family around, including my boyfriend's parents, no boyfriend though, and they all looked at me shocked. I didn't understand why I was getting that look, so I just awkwardly laughed and asked everyone not to tell my boyfriend I was learning the language because I wanted to surprise him. I thought it would be cute to respond to his proposal in his native language. I went looking for my boyfriend and found his brother and the bride instead. We were talking, and eventually I asked, "Hey, is it weird in your culture to not have kids? Because I got this really weird look from your parents when I said I don't want kids." His brother proceeds to tell me that it's not weird, but that my boyfriend has always wanted to have kids, so it probably shocked their parents to hear that I don't want any. Apparently, my boyfriend always wanted at least 3 kids, and he has always been super excited about the idea of having them. I think his brother noticed the look on my face and backtracked a bit, saying something like, "Wait, it's not a big deal. He changed his mind because he loves you more than the idea of having kids." On the ride back home with my boyfriend, I asked my boyfriend if he really is okay about not having kids. He sighed because apparently he had heard from his parents about what I had said. He apologized about it and said that he did stop talking about kids since we have been together, but that his parents always assumed he would still have them. He also sometimes wonders if I'll change my mind, but he doesn't think I ever will. He said that when we talked about this while we were dating, he could imagine a future without kids because he couldn't imagine a future without me. It's been a month since the wedding, but I've started to notice little things with my boyfriend. A lot of our friends have kids, and I'm always letting my friends know that they can bring their kids over instead of having to find a babysitter. I've noticed that my boyfriend looks slightly envious when he sees our friends interact with their kids, or sometimes I see him look slightly dejected when he sees a family with a bunch of kids. Maybe this is in my head now that I know that he's always wanted to be a dad until he met me. Maybe it's not in my head. I truly want him to be happy, but I know I don't want to be a mom. I wish I felt differently, and I wish I could compromise with him, but I would never want to bring kids into this world knowing I don't want them. That's not fair to the kid, and if him being happy means he finds someone else to have kids with, I'll have to live with that. He knows something is wrong because he said I feel far away lately. I think he knows why. I know I have to sit down with him and fully talk this out. Part of me feels like this conversation will lead to us breaking up because he really truly does want to have kids. He might resent me for not wanting to have them. I just feel terrible. Update. 2 days after my original post, my boyfriend and I sat down to talk finally. As I suspected, he knew exactly what had been bugging me, but he didn't want to push me to have the conversation before I was ready. He started it off with why he is okay with not having kids. He grew up with his parents and brother. He saw the joy that his parents got from raising the 2 of them, but he also saw how unhappy they were in their marriage. Yes, they are still together, but they're more like co-parents and roommates than an actual couple. My boyfriend was very cynical when it came to relationships growing up because he felt like he never saw enough happy couples. His parents weren't happy. His friends were in and out of relationships. He was in and out of relationships. In his head, kids would bring him and his partner happiness and purpose in a relationship. Yes, he admitted to the absolute insanity that was his thinking, but when we started dating, he realized this and started going to therapy to help him work these feelings out. He's been in therapy ever since. He said when he met me, I changed everything for him, and that he knew on our second date that he was going to marry me. So when months later I mentioned I didn't want kids, he was disappointed, but the main reason was because the idea of having little versions of me running around was something he had thought about for the months we were dating. And yes, he meant it when he said that he could see a future without kids, but couldn't see a future without me. It's why he had been super supportive about it when I was looking into surgeries to prevent having kids for me. It's why he never even brings up the possibility of either one of us changing our minds. I asked if he was jealous of our friends who have kids, and he laughed. He said that when he sees a family or sees our friends with their kids, he can see that the relationship between a parent and the kid is special, but the freedom that we have in our relationship, along with extra funds we have for ourselves, far outweigh his past feelings about being a dad. He said that I was his family, and if I didn't want to increase the size of our family, that he has no problems with that because he's already so happy. He finally found the love of his life, which he never thought would happen, so he doesn't want to mess with something that's perfect. He just never brought it up with his family and was slightly concerned that they would try to pressure us. Kids are a big thing in their family. His brother already knew and obviously had no problems with it. He said he had a talk with his parents and the relatives he was closest with about it. His parents are not exactly happy, but my boyfriend admitted to me that he lied to them and said he was the one who didn't want to have kids. He just wasn't sure what their reaction would be and didn't want me to deal with any of the negative backlash. He said if I ever feel pressured about anything ever, whether it be by him or his family or even my family, to let him know because we're partners and we work through these things together. He isn't afraid of going no contact with anyone who makes a big deal about something that isn't any of their business. I told him that my main concern was that he was putting my happiness over his because he has a tendency to do that with people he loves. And I didn't want him to regret anything later down the line. He said he understood my concern, but that he swore up and down that these 4 years have been the happiest of his life. And the fact that I was so stressed out about whether he was happy or not is further proof that we are meant for each other, because I also have a tendency to put his happiness over my own. He then proposed to me with the original ring he bought the first year we were dating. I didn't even know he had bought a ring before. He said he would have done it that first year, but I had made a comment that I wanted to wait at least 3 years before getting engaged, and now he's making significantly more money, so he's been looking to go all out on a new ring. But I really love the ring he originally bought. It isn't big or flashy, but it is a very unique design that's subtle and beautiful. The color is also the same color as my boyfriend's eyes, which I'm always gushing about. So I told him there's no point in looking for another ring because this one was already perfect. Am I the jerk for canceling vacation less than 24 hours in due to my kids' behavior? My husband and I have 3 kids, sons who are 9 and 8 and a daughter who's 3. The boys have been driving us crazy. They fight like cats and dogs. We've had countless talks with them about respecting each other, to no avail. I understand sibling rivalry, but it's gotten to the point it's disruptive to us all, every day. I already told my husband last week I wasn't sure if the vacation was a good idea. My husband shut me down pretty much immediately, and things went ahead as planned. First of all, the 3.5-hour car ride was predictably horrible. Boys fighting and riling each other up the whole time. Husband and I kept trying to reassure each other that things would be better once we got there, and they would be too excited to cause trouble. We were wrong. They had so many reminders of what not to do once we got to the rental house, so they do everything wrong from the get-go. Shoes on the white furniture? Check. Running in the house? Check. I turned my back for 2 seconds, and one of them threw a box of chalk in the pool to keep his brother from getting it. We went out to lunch, and they were out of control in the restaurant. One ran away from us in a strange place because he didn't get his way. We finally got to the beach, and they're frankly being brats, refusing sunscreen, fighting over toys, pushing their luck repeatedly, going further and further out in the water than we told them to. By the time we got back to the house, it was around dinner time, and I was fed up. They were totally ruining it for everybody. Nothing had worked, and I told my husband we needed to go home for the reasons mentioned above, mainly that they needed to see a real consequence. My husband still insisted it would get better. I put my foot down and told him that I didn't even want to be there at that point, so either I was leaving or we all were. He got super upset and told me it was ridiculous and unfair to our daughter. I actually agree with him, but saw no other choice at this point. Of course, when I tell the kids, they immediately burst into tears and are begging to stay, promising they'll behave. My mother, who came with us, was also near tears. She thinks her precious grandbabies do no wrong. She argued with me too, begging me to just let it go, but I refused to budge. So we left, less than 24 hours into a 4-day vacation. Half the ride home was spent with them crying, and my husband pretty much gave me the silent treatment the whole way. My mother decided to stay behind a little bit longer, but then started randomly texting me about 30 minutes in, asking if I was serious. She knew I was, and told me the whole reason she came was to spend time with the kids. So I had now ruined it for everybody and their only little ones. Here we are the following evening, and pretty much no one likes me right now except my 3-year-old. Are they right? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Actions have consequences. Your sons are learning a needed lesson. Not the jerk. Kids need consequences, and it sounds as though your husband and mother have been too inclined to give them one more chance. If you ever need to say to them again, "Stop that," or "We're going home," they'll know that you mean it. You're the jerk. Your kids are brats because they were raised by bad parents. They're under 10. I completely blame the parents. You need to figure things out. Both you and your husband need to get on the same page with respect, responsibilities, and discipline. Am I the jerk for not wanting to split my jackpot win with my husband's friend? I, 30 female, played the lottery for the first time last year when everyone was talking about the Powerball jackpot. Since then, I've played casually, only spending a few dollars a week. I occasionally won a few bucks, but I never really expected to win anything big. But it was nice to dream, as I had a ton of debt and have been struggling a lot. Fast forward to a few months ago, won't say the month for privacy. I checked the winning numbers one night against my ticket, and it matched with my numbers perfectly. Initially, I didn't believe it and thought that there had to be a mistake, so I told my husband, male 35, and we checked it like a dozen times, and I was right. We won. It's life-changing, multi-generational, forget you money. We instantly agreed to keep the news to ourselves and wait a few months before we did anything. The past few months have been incredible, filled with disbelief, and though it's been difficult, we have managed not to make any large purchases or change our lifestyle. We fantasized about what to do with our money, but the time to claim is drawing near, so we have begun having more practical discussions about how to claim it and what to do with it. While discussing, my husband, Adam, brought up that he thinks it'll be a great idea to split the money with his best friend and business partner, Tim. Tim and Adam have been friends since they were in middle school and have done everything together ever since. Together, they've started businesses, worked together, invested money, moved to the same town, and have often dreamed about our families making it big together. Since we have taken risks together and are close, Adam feels it's fair to give them 1/3 of the cash prize so that 1, we're not going on this journey to a new life alone, and 2, it's suspicious to make all this money suddenly and more easily explained if Tim makes money as well, since we do everything together. I, however, feel it's risky to share that we've come into this money with them because Tim's family tends to be more flashy and like showing off, and I don't fully trust that they will keep it quiet or modest enough to not raise suspicion. This is important because I've seen community members harass and attack people with far less money just because they feel entitled. This could jeopardize our safety, so I want to avoid it if at all possible. Also, I'm not really comfortable with his plan to add Tim and his wife as members of our LLC to claim the prize, because I think it could have them feel entitled to a bigger chunk or take the money. Adam thinks I'm being selfish, and he won't enjoy our newfound wealth if his friend isn't living the same lifestyle. But I think we could find a way to later give them some money after figuring out a way to explain how we came into it without telling them that we won the lottery. No idea how to do that yet. Anyway, am I the jerk for not wanting to tell them we won the lottery and split the money with them? Am I selfish? Not the jerk. Call an attorney and a financial advisor. Keep the money out of your husband's business. Not the jerk. If you want to buy Tim a new Accord, go nuts, but giving him 1/3 of your winnings is insane. Talk to a lawyer ASAP. If you're not already talking to one, you're doing it wrong. Also, get the money somewhere that your husband cannot decide to move it without your permission and knowledge. I'm 28, female, and my boyfriend, who's 31, is obsessed with becoming a content creator and emptied out retirement funds. He really wants to be a YouTuber/Twitch streamer. He makes YouTube videos and streams on Twitch. Around 4 years ago, he quit his job and pulled everything he could out of his 401k to try and do it full time. It didn't take off. He ran out of money and had to get a job again. The first time he did it, he made it 9 months before running out of money. Rinse and repeat about once a year. He stuffs his 401k with money, but then quits and pulls it all out to try and do this full time again. Also, because he quits so soon, he's not vested and doesn't get to keep any employer match. He now makes it about a month before running out of money and having to go back to work, except he basically starts with 0 retirement. We just started the 4th iteration. He informed me last night that he has quit his job and started the withdrawal process for his 401k. I asked him what's his game plan, and it's basically, just do the same thing, but more often now that I don't have to go to a job. I've tried encouraging him to make a plan and try different content, not gaming, but he's convinced playing Valorant will get him there. I'm a full-time streamer on Twitch and make a lot of money doing brand deals on TikTok and YouTube for gaming stuff. He really wants this lifestyle and refuses to accept that he may just need to keep working while working on YouTube on the side. I try to remind him that I streamed to no one for years while working full-time, and lockdown is probably the only reason I succeeded, and that ship is long gone. I would love for him to succeed with it, but I need him to work if we're going to be married one day. I need him to be saving for retirement and be responsible. I've never had to cover his bills or anything like that, But I'm worried about his future because he keeps yanking out his retirement repeatedly. I don't know how to approach this. We had great years together before I became a streamer, and now it's the job he wants. I tried encouraging him to try new things while also working full-time, but I don't understand because I got laid off at lockdown and got to just do it while the government sent me checks. I worry it never happens for him and he has no retirement, but also no career growth because he quits so often. I don't know what to do. I have multiple streamer friends. Almost all of them do it after work at a real job. Only one friend actually pays his bills with streaming. He too streamed to no one for years and slowly built himself up from the ground while working other jobs. He's also very smart about what he streams, markets himself, and with all that, there are still times where he runs thin enough to consider getting a part-time job again. Your boyfriend is delusional. This is the new equivalent of, I'm gonna start a band. If you're still wanting to make this work, you need to sit him down and tell him bluntly that this didn't work the last 8 times he did it, and you need a stable partner. If he wants to stream, he can do so after work. If he gets to where he's making good supplemental income, then he can quit. Money is one of the #1 reasons of divorce routinely. This is a major problem and needs to get sorted. My wife won't let me attend my favorite band's concert. Context: my favorite band is coming into town this week, and we've been planning on going to this concert for a long time. The band, my wife introduced me to, and it's now my favorite band. She takes pride in that and wants us to experience the concert together. She also loves them a lot. Here's the problem. My wife is 36 weeks pregnant. She doesn't and probably can't go to the concert because of the loud music, the crowds, etc. When I say that I still want to go, she's furious and frequently cries about it. She is pregnant, so I understand the crying. I can't help but feel as if she's being selfish, and just because she can't enjoy the concert doesn't mean I can't as well. What do you guys think? Am I the jerk? Edit. Okay, this blew up. I just want to add further information. First of all, I see everyone getting upset with me. I understand, but please take into consideration, this is the reason I came to this subreddit. Not because I feel as if I'm in the right. I'm asking because I wanted to seek the opinions of others. I tried to sell the tickets, but no one has bought them. I put them up for sale 2 weeks ago, and the tickets totaled to $600. I asked all of our friends, and they're all busy, so I didn't want them to go to waste. I said we planned it for a long time. That is the case. Since it's her first pregnancy, she didn't know how she would feel, and now she isn't comfortable going. I also want to add, we planned this with a group of friends, not just us. I didn't feel the need to add this information because personally I didn't think it would blow up. For those of you who are asking, this band is very niche and hasn't toured in years, especially since lockdown. She isn't worried about preterm labor, just upset that I would go without her. You're the jerk. Your wife is more important than a concert. Put her first and sell the tickets to someone else, and buy her some flowers as an apology. You're the jerk. Be serious. How do you think she feels knowing that you're going to go to a concert that she would enjoy but can't go to? Besides, this late in the pregnancy, she definitely needs your support and assistance. What if something goes wrong while you're at the concert? At this point, I would be putting all activities that place you out of reach on hiatus. She's sacrificing her entire body and mental health to grow your child. She can't drink, eat certain foods, or even sit comfortably. How have you contributed to the growth of this baby? You haven't. How about you make a small sacrifice and stay home? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You can't be serious. If I were her, I'd seriously be calling a divorce lawyer ASAP. What kind of partner would leave his pregnant wife at home to go to a concert that you knew she wanted to go to, but can't because she's pregnant? You sound like a horrible spouse, and I guarantee you'll be an even worse father than you are husband if you're selfish enough to even think about doing something like this. I hope she sees this as the major red flag that it is and dumps your sorry butt pronto. Why she would have a kid with someone like you is beyond me. Not the jerk. You and your wife both deserve to do things every now and then that you enjoy, even if the other one can't come along for whatever reason. If I were pregnant, which I haven't been in a long time, and my husband wanted to go to a concert that I couldn't attend, I'd tell him to have a good time and bring me back a souvenir. Edit. You can insult me however you'd like, but why on earth would you attack my husband over this? He was the best man I ever knew, and he went home to be with the Lord 12 years ago. He'd be rolling over in his grave if he saw how ridiculous some of you are. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If Reddit Boy tried to go to a concert without me, I'd celebrate. Very rarely do I get a moment away from this guy. Free pumpkin pies for everyone. This is a story from many years ago when grocery stores were closed on Christmas and Thanksgiving. I worked for a small chain of grocery stores in the Mid-Atlantic and the Deli. Santoni's, shout out. A day before Thanksgiving, the bakery manager asked if anybody from our department would be willing to stay and work all night, just baking pumpkin pies for orders. We were open the day before Thanksgiving till 4, then closed Thanksgiving. I volunteered as I was a college student on Thanksgiving break. I came to work that night and was left a note about temps, timing, and packaging, but no numbers or quantities. This made me nervous, so I called the manager at home and said, "How many pies do you want me to bake?" She told me to keep baking until she came in. And I questioned that, asking, "How many pies exactly do you want me to make?" She obviously was irritated and told me that I didn't need to worry about how many. Just keep cooking until she came in at 5. Okay, cue malicious compliance. I loaded a 6-wheeler cart with frozen pies, put them on trays, and started baking. As the pies were baking, I prepped racks ahead of time and folded boxes while pies cooled. I was a logistical savant. Everything went perfectly, and I was a machine operating at optimal efficiency. By the time she came in at 5, I had cooked every pumpkin pie in her freezer. She lost it. "What the heck is going on? What am I supposed to do with all these pies? You cooked over 400 pies, and I only have orders for 100. The store manager, hearing the commotion, came over and asked what was going on. She said, "She cooked every pie we have in the store, even the Christmas ones. What am I supposed to do with all these pies?" He asked, "Why did you cook all the pies?" And I told him, "She told me to." He asked her if that was true, and she said, "No, well, I told her keep cooking until I got here, but nobody's ever cooked that many before. I didn't even think it would be close." "Then this is on you," he replied and walked away. The best part was that since we were closed the next day, the employees were allowed to take all the leftover bakery items home with them. I took home 10 pumpkin pies and multiple bags of bread and rolls. Every other employee in the store was very, very grateful. Am I the jerk for leaving my date at a bar? I went on a date with a girl Sunday. Let's say her name is Mandy. I've met Mandy several times through my friend's girlfriend, Sarah. Mandy always seemed nice and fun to talk to, so I asked her to hang out Sunday. I knew she liked football because she's been by my friend's house for games several times, so I asked her to come with to watch the game. We went to a sports bar for dinner. The plan was to watch the game, have some drinks, and maybe play pool. So I picked her up Sunday. We got to the bar, and Mandy said that her friend was sitting over there at a table with some other people. She went and said hi. We sat at the bar and ate. Then she asked if it was cool if we went and sat by them. I didn't really want to, but agreed. We went over there and she introduced me. That was basically it. From then on, I felt like a third wheel. I tried to talk about football with some of the other people, but they didn't watch sports. I tried starting a conversation about other stuff with one of the guys, and it didn't seem like it was going anywhere. So I sat and watched the game while Mandy talked to her friends. Time passed, and the game was almost over, so I told Mandy I was probably going to head out after. She said, "Oh, come on, one more drink and we'll go." Okay, fine. Then her friends started buying rounds of shots for each other. Not me. Understandable, they don't know me. Besides, I was driving. I finished my soda and told Mandy I was going to go because I worked in the morning. She got a confused look and looked at her beer, then the time, and then her friends and said, "Oh well, I didn't finish my drink yet." I said, "Well, I'm leaving. I can give you a ride home if you want." She said, "Okay, let me finish my drink." I said, "Okay," and sat down. Then she started messing around with her friends again, going outside with them, playing darts, not drinking her drink. I said, "Mandy, I'm leaving." She didn't acknowledge me or say bye, so I left. Yesterday after work, Sarah called me and yelled at me about leaving Mandy stranded. She said when you drive someone somewhere, you take them home too, but she didn't know I was such a jerk to leave someone alone at a bar like that. Mandy didn't even know that I left until she saw my jacket was gone, and apparently Mandy had to lift home and I should reimburse her. I explained my side and she said, "So what? She was having fun. You should have joined in instead of sitting and moping." I feel like I really tried to get into the conversation and join the group. It just wasn't working. I didn't feel like sitting there bored forever. Her friends were there. It's not like she was alone. Am I the jerk for leaving? Not the jerk. You told her a couple times that you were leaving and offered her a ride. If she wanted a ride, she needed to wrap it up and head out with you when you left. She did not do that. Not the jerk. You gave Mandy several chances to get a ride home with you. She made her choices and got the consequences of those choices. I'm going to say you're the jerk, but only to yourself. From your story, it seemed like you were the designated driver for her to go have a good time with her friends. The fact you still hung around after all the BS she was putting you through, dude, you deserve better and shouldn't accept that behavior. Also, I wouldn't date any of Sarah's friends if this is the bunch she hangs out with. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Mandy? Please let us know. I always loved horrible first dates. Just shows you that you don't need to waste any more time on this person. Am I the jerk for including my stepdaughter's hobby expenses in her allowance? My husband, Frank, who's 52, has 2 daughters from his first marriage, Alice, who's 11, and Brenda, who's 13. My husband divorced his first wife, Candy, when the kids were 3 and 5. I, 32, female, met Frank after his divorce through a mutual friend a few months after his divorce. We dated almost 8 months before I met the kids. They were 4 and 6, and I've been in their lives ever since. Frank and Candy split custody 50-50, and she and I are cordial, and the 3 of us want what's best for the kiddos, including individual and group therapy. We coordinate pickups and drop-off at school and extracurriculars, and sit next to each other at the kids' events. Brenda has a passion for baking. She likes to watch shows about it and then tries to follow the recipes and even create her own. She also will try to mix ingredients without recipes just to see what will happen. Frank and I have encouraged this hobby as she finds the research and process of baking to be relaxing and fun. She is also responsible for cleaning up the kitchen after she bakes, an expectation she believes is also fair. We have a dishwasher that she knows how to load and use. We also bought her own mixing bowls and baking utensils, but she has free use of all kitchen appliances, obviously. However, she doesn't eat or want to really share her creations. She just likes the process and then will toss it. She will go through more than a pound of flour and 8 sticks of butter in a week. Alice likes to play online video games and will ask for money to buy in-game money to play with her friends. With growing food costs and to teach them the value of $1, Frank told both kids he was increasing their monthly allowance from $25 a month to $75, but with the stipulation that they both pay for their own hobbies, meaning any baking Brenda wanted to do, she can buy her own supplies, and any in-game money Alice wanted to buy, she can use her allowance for. Since increasing their allowance, they are more hesitant to add money to their hobbies, though Brenda is still baking several times a month, and Alice is still getting in-game money, but significantly less. Brenda has brought up frequently that she feels it's mean that she has to save her money, about $20 worth, to pay for flour and dairy products when we should just buy it for her. We've explained our reasoning several times. Candy recently approached Frank and I, demanding to know why we're not being supportive of Brenda's hobby. We explain the reasoning behind it, and she insists we should just pay for it to be supportive. We've argued that this is supportive and also a teaching tool to learn that things cost money and how to save for the things you want, which both kids have demonstrated by saving and minimizing their purchases. Candy also doesn't allow Brenda to bake at her home because she doesn't have time to deal with it, even though she is capable of cleaning up with minor supervision. Am I the jerk for including my stepkids' hobbies in their allowance? You're the jerk for allowing her to throw out that much food. What a waste. If she doesn't want to eat it, that's fine. But why do you allow her to refuse to let the rest of the family eat it? OP. I appreciate your judgment, and I hate wasting the food. I grew up poor, and we are now comfortable middle class, and it hurts. But also, her creations are mostly experimental, and she doesn't like to take advice on how to improve things. So her baking is not very edible or visually appealing. Lots of food dye, to put it mildly. If I gave them to the neighbors, it would frankly be insulting. Here, throw this away in your trash, not mine. This is one of the reasons we wanted to have the allowance, to limit the food waste and have her be more careful with her ingredients. Not the jerk. I disagree with Candy and your friends. Frank increased their allowance while stipulating that they had to pay for their hobbies. Great. Now Brenda understands how to be better with her money. Baking is an expensive hobby, and the costs make even less sense if you aren't going to even eat or share the stuff you're baking. Also, is an allowance not money that comes from the parents? Frank is still effectively paying for Brenda's hobby while also teaching her how to spend money wisely. Good for you. You're the jerk as is your husband, for teaching a 13-year-old that it's perfectly acceptable to flagrantly waste food as a hobby, no matter who's paying for it. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how her and her husband are doing this or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for yelling at my mom about the haircut she gave me and going to my dad's? I, 17 female, was recently told by my mom that I should schedule a hair appointment because the ends of my hair were getting really split. I called and they told me they were basically all booked for the next month due to someone needing a surgery and having to move appointments around. I told my mom that, and she said that she could do it, and I kinda decided, why not? I guess it's good to not have a ton of split ends. So she set up a chair and got the scissors and began doing her work. I was scrolling through Instagram, but after the first 2 cuts, I noticed there was a massive amount of hair on the floor. I asked her why there was so much hair on the floor, and she said my hair was really damaged. I got up and looked in the mirror, and she had cut it at basically my shoulders. For context, my hair is basically down to my waist. I asked her what on earth she was thinking, and she just repeated that it was damaged, like some sort of malfunctioning spam call program. I looked at a few chunks of undamaged hair in the mirror, and there was 1, maybe 2 at most inches of split ends. I asked her why on earth she had basically cut off 2 feet of hair for no reason, and she now said, "I accidentally cut off a bit too much." I pretty much had to let her finish because there was already too much gone to do anything else about it. So she kept cutting and then claimed she had made it uneven by mistake, so she took even more off. In the end, I was left with basically a bob cut at my chin. I was upset, so I grabbed my school stuff and a few clothes and drove over to my dad's house. About an hour later, my mom came over to pick me up and take her car. My parents split the payments with me 50-50, so she doesn't own it, and told my dad it's her custody week and she's just being a typical upset teenager. My dad told her to go home or he was going to call the cops, so she left. But I got a nasty text which summed up to, "I tried to do something nice for you, and in return you violated your custody agreement with the car that I pay for." I told her I would be more than happy to go back to her house if she cut her hair like mine. She also has really long hair, but she refused. So I'm just gonna stay at my dad's for the time being. Not the jerk at all. I truly don't understand how someone can accidentally turn a dead-end trim into cutting off 2 feet of hair. And then she's just going to stand by her actions while saying she wouldn't want the same thing done to her hair. I hate to say it, but this seems intentional. Your mom needs help. Edit. Furthermore, you said you noticed the large amounts of hair on the floor after 2 cuts. So in the first 2 cuts, she took it up to your shoulders? There's no way this wasn't on purpose. I'm so angry for you. Not the jerk. Unfortunately, this seems like jealousy and some other unresolved issues. Your hair is an extension of yourself, and she took it upon herself to literally chop up your trust in her by cutting off all your hair and worse, being unapologetic about it and petty. Glad your dad is there for you, and in the meantime, they make amazing extensions for affordable prices now if you need some camouflage. I had a bad haircut from a salon and had to do this. Am I the jerk for not going to Thanksgiving at my brother's new house? My brother and his wife just bought a house earlier this year and want to host Thanksgiving at their house this time. Typically, I host, and my mom and I do all of the cooking and cleaning, but this year, I received a pretty upsetting medical diagnosis. Because of this, sister-in-law said she would host and cook. Every year, my mother and father-in-law spend Thanksgiving at our house, as do my parents, brother, sister-in-law, and all of the kids. I spoke with my brother about Thanksgiving yesterday and mentioned that my in-laws are excited to see their new house. He said he was excited to have everyone together, especially because he just decorated their house. We made a plan for who was bringing what food. Late last night, my sister-in-law sends me a text saying no offense to me or my in-laws, but that they only want their families to attend. Basically, she was saying my mother-in-law and father-in-law are not invited. I was under the impression that it was the same Thanksgiving we have every year, but moving it to a different house this year. There's no way I can tell my in-laws they aren't invited to Thanksgiving, so now I feel like I have to host a dinner at my house. Hosting, cooking, cleaning up the house, and then attending the gathering at my brother's house will wipe me out. There's no way I can physically do both, so I'm not going to my brother's this year. I know he will be upset since it's their new house. Am I the jerk for not attending Thanksgiving at my brother's? Update. My brother called me earlier to say he and his wife talked last night, and she was absolutely against my in-laws attending. She didn't have a valid reason. My brother didn't agree with her at all, feels she's being unreasonable, and told her that she needed to be the one to tell me that they aren't invited because he was not supporting her decision. He then said he and the rest of the family will be coming to my house and attending Thanksgiving as if it were any other year. They, along with my husband, will be taking over all of the hosting, cooking, and cleaning responsibilities. It sounds like sister-in-law is going to host her family at her home. I know there were a lot of questions and I'll try to get to them individually. But no, sister-in-law and my in-laws are absolutely not strangers. We've spent holidays together as one big family for years, so it's really hard to not feel like she's purposely excluding them. Neither myself, my husband, or my brother can think of any reason she has for doing this other than to exercise some kind of control over the situation. Thank you everyone for the warm words and great suggestions. I'm actively looking into ordering a Thanksgiving meal to take the work off of everyone. I think we all deserve a break. Not the jerk. Don't bother going to your brother's house. It's too much given your situation. You can see the house and that family another time. It's their choice to limit attendance, and your non-attendance is the consequence of their choice. Don't cook. Have guests bring the food, or most of it. Order what needs to be filled in, or just order the entire meal. Many restaurants, groceries, and caterers have menus that they sell. Spend your time relaxing and enjoying the company. Am I the jerk for ignoring my coworker who has a family emergency? I have this one coworker who gets on my nerves. She's still fairly new, but she does things that really aggravate me. First of all, there hasn't been one full week that she hasn't called off. She will frantically text me and other coworkers to see if we can cover, or she calls out right before her shift and my manager scrambles to find coverage. She said that she didn't get paid enough at this job, probably because you don't work the hours you're given, so she went and got another job that pays $1 more. After that, she changed her availability to Monday through Wednesday only at my job. She gets those 3 days if she's lucky, but not always. Well, this week she has 3 shifts, Monday through Wednesday, and on Sunday night she texts me to ask if I work on Monday. I didn't, but I didn't say anything because it was pretty late and she could have assumed I was already asleep. Well, today, just now before her shift in 2 hours, she texts me to ask if I'm working again because she had a family emergency pop up and her dad needs her. I was asleep and didn't see the text, and then she called me 2 times in a row. I didn't answer either of them. I don't know if she's being honest because she calls out at least once a week, and I sure as heck don't want to go in because I'm already the main person to cover days when we're short-staffed. I've been working through the weekends for 4 months straight now. I got today off because I have a college class in the middle of the day, and while I could skip it, I already spend too much time at my job when I'm in school full-time. I'm praying that my manager doesn't ask me to work the closing shift because she didn't show up, but that's usually what happens, and then I have to push through my anxiety to say no. There's a possibility she's truly having a family emergency, but she cries wolf and calls out so much that I don't know what to believe. Am I the jerk for ignoring her? Update. Just got the "Hey, can you cover?" text from my manager that I was dreading. He was nice enough to ask me to come in after my class, which ends at 6, so I would only have to be there for a few hours, but I don't know what to tell him. I feel like if I give in, then I'm just feeding into her continuing to call out like this. Update. I told my manager that she tried to contact me both Sunday and this morning and that I was not going to be coming in today because I need to focus on school. He was super understanding about it, and I'm sure we will talk more about it my next shift. I know my manager is already well aware, but I'm going to reiterate that she is unreliable and that resentment does build among coworkers when you let things slide for one person and the rest of the team has to pick up the slack. I understand why he won't just fire her right now because we are seriously understaffed, but something's gotta give. Not the jerk. Sorry, but I'm not available today is a valid and complete answer. You sound young, and it might feel really off saying something like that, but the more times you use it, the more comfortable it'll get. Karen wife demands my son's college fund. I've been married to my wife for 3 years. I have a 16-year-old son from my previous marriage, and his grandparents and I are on good terms. We've set up a joint account to contribute towards his college fund. The problem started when my wife requested that I pull money from my son's college fund to pay for a C-section in a private hospital. I declined her request and refused to even negotiate. She complained about how I didn't seem to care about her or our son's well-being, even though there was nothing to worry about in terms of health. Yes, every medical procedure has its own risks, but the local free hospitals we have are decent and offer great care. All family members and friends had their kids there. She disagreed and criticized the poor service local hospitals have and insisted that this was a big deal since it concerned both her and our son's health. I tried assuring her, saying she will be fine, but she argued that I have no idea what it's like and told me if I refuse to put money towards the CSE, then I shouldn't be surprised when she puts her maiden name on our son's birth certificate instead of my family's name. I refused as I saw no need to waste money on private hospitals when we had free service and care available. She stopped bringing it up, and days later she had a scheduled CS at the local hospital, and I wasn't allowed to be at the hospital, and I respected her wish. I only saw my son when she came home, and I was shocked to learn she went ahead and put her maiden name on the birth certificate. I immediately went off on her, but she said I caused this and claimed I was obviously favoring my oldest over my youngest before he was even born. I said she was dead wrong and called her petty and vengeful for doing this purely to punish me solely for the fact that I was unable to afford a private hospital. Her family watched and she told me to step out of the room, but I said we weren't finished talking. She started crying and her mom got involved and told me to step out because I was stressing her daughter out. I had an argument with her too and asked if she approves of any part of her daughter's behavior, and she just shook her head, telling me to calm down and give her some time to rest. She said no, but I bear blame too for disregarding my wife's needs after she made them clear and pointed out that pulling some money for the private hospital wouldn't hurt. But my parents disagreed and are upset and refusing to even visit, calling my wife unhinged and toxic. Not the jerk. Your wife sounds petty and exhausting. I get that pregnancy is stressful, but that's no excuse for acting maliciously. She has no right to dictate what to do with the money you put aside for your teenage son. The baby she had is yours too, so her decision to give him only her name was nothing but spiteful. Not the jerk. If your wife wanted to give birth in a private hospital, she should have made that clear from the start so that you could both save up for it. Deciding last minute that you need to steal from your kid's college fund is absolutely ridiculous and entitled. Getting revenge by not allowing you into the delivery room, not allowing you to meet your kid until she came home, and giving him her maiden name is absolutely shocking. There are so many red flags. She is incredibly toxic. Has she always been like this? What's her relationship with a stepson like? You're the jerk. Wow, I guess I'm the only one here, so bring on the downvotes. Your wife is about to give birth to her first kid. She's worried that the quality of healthcare that she will receive in this incredibly painful and vulnerable moment in her life is not good enough. Instead of taking her seriously, trying to understand why she's concerned, and potentially brainstorming for other ways to get the money to pay for the treatment, you laugh in her face and tell her she should be fine with the free stuff. Sure, easy for you to say, as it's not your body that will potentially burst open, and then get upset the kid doesn't get your last name like it's 1950. You're a huge jerk, and I hope she divorces you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Stealing the stepson's college fund is just sick. I'd kick Karen out is what I'd do. Am I the jerk for not letting my daughter go to her homecoming dance? My daughter is 14 and a freshman in high school. She came home one day after being at her mother's for a week. We split custody and wrote homecoming on our calendar and starts talking about all the plans she's made with her best friend to go to homecoming together. Homecoming week happened to fall on a week she was with me. She starts raving to my wife and I about the dress her mom took her to buy and that she's matching with her friend. She had even bought a ticket already. I was furious with her entitlement to just make up all these plans without asking me first. I can admit it's not just her fault, but her mother's as well for not clearing it with me before buying her the dress and ticket. In fact, I wouldn't put it past her and her mother to have bought the dress and ticket before asking in order to force me into letting her go. I want to teach her a lesson about asking first and not assuming that I'm just going to let her do whatever she wants and that she can't manipulate people in order to get her way. So I told her that if she had asked first, I'd be happy to let her go to her homecoming dance. But since she decided to make plans and buy stuff before even asking if she could go, I wasn't going to let her. She cried and told me that you can only get one freshman homecoming, and I told her that maybe she should have thought about that. I said all homecomings are the same anyway, that she has 3 more opportunities to go and she's not missing much. She sulked in her room for the rest of the day and didn't talk much. I tried to comfort her, but my wife said not to because I'd be teaching her that I'll give her my attention if she acts upset and cries. I went to comfort her anyway because I didn't think she was acting, but she rejected me. That infuriated me even more, so I left her in her room to cry alone. Her mother was furious when she found out and demanded that I pay her back the money she spent on the dress and homecoming ticket. I said absolutely not because she didn't clear it with me before buying those things, so it's her own fault. However, she contacted her attorney, who contacted mine, and long story short, I got to sit down with my wife and our family therapist for a painstaking conversation about communication. It's now long after homecoming, and my daughter is pretty much back to normal, but she's still angry with me for not letting her go to that dance. I stand firmly by my decision not to let her go. But was I the jerk? You're the jerk. I stopped reading at Teach Her a Lesson. It's a school dance. She's not having privileges restricted for poor behavior, so this is just about your ego and need for control, which is a stupid thing to subject a kid to. You're really claiming your kid and her mother are scheming to strong-arm you into a school event that most parents are excited to take pictures for, getting all dressed up for a first formal high school dance? You're the jerk. It's standard high school stuff, and your daughter will never forget this. It isn't some wild after-party, it's literally her homecoming dance. I cannot even imagine my father acting this way towards me. She will always remember Dad not letting her go to her freshman homecoming for such a petty reason. Yes, it's important to teach your kids to ask permission and not expect, but she didn't even ask you to pay for anything or expect anything from you at all. You blew this way out of proportion. You're the jerk. I'm a dad of teenagers too, including daughters. You need to hear this. Kids her age are starting to learn to be independent. She's exercising her independence in a safe manner by going to a school-sanctioned event, and for some weird reason you don't want her to? Why on earth should she have to ask you to go to homecoming? Please apologize to her for interfering with her plans. Please tell her you realize you were wrong. There was no reason for you to stop her from going. Tell her that like all parents, you're doing your best and sometimes you make mistakes, and this was one of those times. Tell her you're going to try to do better to let her make her own decisions without having to run everything by you. Not the jerk. Going against the grain here, but most of these people bashing on you are not/will not ever make good parents. They were not raised to be respectful and ask permission before making plans, and they will not teach their spawn to either. That's why they're wasting their time here on Reddit instead of doing important things in life. Well, what are you doing? Gotta go. Got an important Zoom meeting soon. God bless you, and I hope you can save your daughter before it's too late. Well, what do you think? Is Dad a jerk for not letting her go to homecoming or not? Please let us know. I'm still in awe about that guy talking about the Zoom meeting. Bruh. Rich Karen goes bankrupt from crypto and expects sympathy from me. I, 30 male, come from a very poor family, but my wife is from a very rich one. She started off the marriage with a net worth of $31 million, and I started it off with $300,000 in student debt. When we got married, she made me get a prenup that separated her inheritance and got rid of my right to an elective share to it if she dies. In other words, I renounced my spousal right to a third of her separate property if she dies, making her sole beneficiaries her siblings or potential kids. My debt and our incomes were also separated. We both got lawyers. Hers was much more expensive than mine, and notarized the prenup. None of this was a problem for me. As a man, I'm determined to pull myself up by the bootstraps, not rely on my wife's wealth for anything. The only beneficial part of the prenup for me was that our incomes were also now separate, and I earned a somewhat higher income than her, and so I was okay with it overall. 5 years later, I still don't have a seventh of her current wealth, but her investments haven't been doing great this year either. As a sole crypto investor, things have been going really poorly for her. I had warned her not to do this, but she invests in a cryptocurrency called Monero, which is down 47% this year. About 5% of her money was not in her wallet and was in the FTX exchange itself, which she lost after FTX went bankrupt recently. She now has a net worth of around $18 million. I don't invest in crypto, but rather in index funds. They've taken a hit this year as well, but based on historical performance, they should go back up eventually. No such guarantee for crypto, and certainly not for Monero. I come home to her crying the other day after she found out that FTX went bankrupt. I told her, that's rough. not in a sarcastic way, and I went upstairs to change. When I got back downstairs, she started going off on me and complaining, talking about how nonchalant I was about her losing money. I pointed out that she's still extraordinarily rich in spite of her poor choices, and that she could stop investing in crypto at any time if she wanted to. Besides, she was the one that wanted to separate everything, so why does she want to make it my problem all of a sudden? Am I the jerk? I don't understand why having separate finances would stop you from being able to comfort her. If my partner said they dropped $20 down a drain pipe, I'd have more sympathy for him than you showed your wife who lost a considerable amount of money. I get she has more, but it still sucks, and I don't see why you couldn't sympathize with her. She didn't ask you for money or ask you to solve her problems. She just asked you to care that your wife is having problems. You're the jerk. The whole backstory doesn't matter. You agreed to it. You say yourself you felt fine with having separate finances, so it's unrelated. And what you're actually asking is, am I the jerk for not listening to or supporting my wife when she was upset? Unless, of course, you're holding a grudge over the finances, are kind of happy to see her fail. But I would think she married you for support, love, and friendship since it wasn't for money. You aren't providing that. Her financial choices weren't smart, but many of us middle-class folks lose money and still get love and support. And if you're feeling burned by the prenup, I think you signed on for that, as one-sided as it is. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. I'm genuinely baffled by these posts on here that are like, the person who's supposed to be my partner was going through something upsetting, and I was casually cruel about it, and now they're upset, and why is this my problem? It's your problem because she's your wife, expecting some kind of empathy from you. Note that she wasn't even asking you to somehow cover the losses, just to not be a total jerk about the fact that she's lost money. Isn't a wildly unreasonable expectation from a spouse. Not the jerk. Let's reverse the roles. Rich man worth $31 million marries a woman with $300,000 in debt, makes her get a prenup that prevents her from getting anything when he passes on. Man invests way too much into a high-risk investment. Man loses everything and cries to his wife about it. Is Reddit really going to tell her she's wrong to tell him, that's rough, and walk away? Heck no. Reddit is going to tell her it's his fault he lost everything and that she needs to leave him. The hypocrisy on this site never ceases to amaze me. Normally, I don't engage with idiots who feel the need to say things like, but what if the roles were reversed? But since I'm a woman who's been in a similar situation to the wife in this story, allow me to set you straight very quickly. The reason we on Reddit judge the OP differently, based on whether they're a male or a female, is because after the literal thousands of years of you guys treating us like dirt, it's time for payback, like long overdue. Many won't admit this, but the truth is, you guys deserve to be judged differently than we do, because it adds a little slice of fairness to the world. Don't like it? Grow up and deal with it. Blame your ancestors for treating us like second-class citizens for the last, 10,000 years. Oh, but we were fighting wars, hunting for food, and building crap. Yeah, sure you were. While we were the ones doing the real work of raising kids, which even to this day, you're still unable to do. Why do you think courts give custody to the mothers 90% of the time? Because we're the ones who are actually fit to be parents. Why do you think we get alimony? Because we deserve it and you don't. So next time you even think about leaving a "what if the roles were reversed" comment, I want you to remember what I said and ask yourself, what if the reason we get judged differently is because we deserve to be? Which you do. It's 2022. If you're a dude, then let's face it, there's a 90% chance you're not worth anyone's time. Well, don't you sound like a happy, pleasant person to be around? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. That's one of the reasons I'm glad you're broke, Reddit boy. You don't have money to do stupid things with and lose it. Am I the jerk for siding with my sister's ex regarding her past? As a kid, I always looked up to my older sister because she was so cool, pretty, and the popular girl. I always tried to be like her, dressed like her, listen to her music, you get the idea. I was popular the first time I stepped through the high school door because I was basically a copy of her. I was overwhelmed by the attention, but quickly found out she was mostly popular with only the guys. She dated many of the guys in our high school, and they thought that I would too. I was so embarrassed. I had our mom take me out to buy new clothes and everything. Whatever she did, I went the opposite way. She wore tons of makeup, I wore none. She listened to a certain type of music, I didn't. We went to different colleges. Fast forward to now. Sis must have figured out her lifestyle wasn't healthy, so she stopped dating a bunch of guys, deleted all of those apps, and met Sam. He's very good looking, with a great personality and an amazing job. He was smart, funny, outgoing, and can own the entire room when he walks in. He grew up in a different city, so his family doesn't live here, but we've met, and they're amazing just like him. Sam quickly replaced us as Mom's favorite kid and became our dad's best friend. He eventually proposed, and everyone was over the moon. I was very happy for my sister. Last week, she came to my door looking like a complete wreck. She was crying so hard she couldn't talk. After an hour or so, I calmed her down enough to get the story. Apparently, they were at a party and were mingling separately when he overheard some of the guys talking about her popularity. Sam joined the group and got her dating history. 2 of the guys in that group dated her, and about 4 other guys at the party dated her too, one of whom works with him, which is why they were there. He heard about the guys laughing about how all of the men in town were depressed when she went away to college, but rejoiced when she came back. When they got home, he asked her. She told him the truth, and he left without saying a word. I helped my sister, and she's been staying with me for now. She hasn't told anyone and has been trying to get in touch with Sam and his family, but they're all ignoring her. Everyone on our side is super confused because Sam just disappeared. Our cousin, my best friend, pinned me down the other day to ask what had happened. I told her, and she was appalled. She called him all sorts of names and insecure. I said I can understand from his view, as we live in a small town, and it's hard to know many men and your coworkers know your future wife. Then my cousin and I got into it. She said I should be supporting my sister no matter what. I argued I am supporting her, but supporting doesn't mean I have to agree with her. Now I might lose my best friend. Edit. We're all in our 30s, graduated college, and living on our own. You're the jerk, and so is your sister's ex. She deserves better. Right? Sam is not that great of a guy, apparently. Hard, you're the jerk. You sound pretty smug and judgmental. You're the jerk. From a male point of view, neither of all those guys had the quality to keep her. Every one of them happily took advantage of her, but now acts like she's to be an outcast or blamed. What a bunch of worms. Sam had lots of good qualities, but because he found out that she had a life before him, what a surprise. He leaves without a word? You defend him and put all the blame on your sister for him leaving without a word. You're the jerk. Unpopular opinion, but not the jerk. Sam has held values throughout his life that he thought his fiancée had shared throughout hers. Once he found out that she didn't, that her past had been kept secret from him, that he's been working with a guy who had her long before he did, and that he's now the laughingstock of the town for being with her, he has every right to no longer want to stay in this relationship. If you find out the person you're about to marry has actually lived a life that you never would have approved of, and that they've been hiding their past from you, you have every right to call things off. It's unfortunate how programmed you all are to be non-judgmental, as you call it. It has resulted in a generation of fools who think their actions should never have consequences. Hate to break it to you, but they do. I'm just glad Sam found out the truth before he actually married her. There are women out there who have the same values he does, and they're the ones who will deserve a man like him. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. That's the good thing about being with someone as ugly as Reddit boy. Their past dating history is basically non-existent. Am I the jerk for wanting my daughter to meet my girlfriend despite being an absent father? I, 29 male, had a kid with my ex-wife, 32 female, 10 years ago, my daughter. And there's no real way to sugarcoat this, but as soon as she was born, I left, and I never ended up seeing her in the hospital as a baby. Was never really present in her life at any point, but ended up getting a divorce 11 months later, with her getting full custody, of course. I married young, was really stupid, and thought I'd end up being a good dad despite no skills, but got scared that I'd turn out like my dad and chickened out. Not really an excuse, but an explanation, I guess. I paid child support for the first 3 years, but stopped afterwards. I've been speaking with the girl's mother about reconnecting with her, but she thinks it's best that I stay out of their lives majorly. But I think making amends is always possible, so I'm not sure. I just really want to make things right, but I will respect their decision. I've seen her a few times, but her mother has always introduced me as a friend. She says she will tell her when she's ready. I've been dating a girl who's 28 for about 10 months. and I really like her. I think I could definitely see a life for us, and I know that sounds weird, but she's also said the same. I was also speaking to my daughter's mother about meeting this girl, but she says absolutely not, and that that's a bad idea. But if I want to reintroduce her into my life, isn't it fair that she gets to see my life too? Am I the jerk for this? Her mother says it's a very bad idea, so it's making me think I am, but I just generally cannot see why. Obviously, I care for this girl, and I will care for her life too, but a relationship has to be two-sided, and I don't think it's out of the question to show her my life too. You're the jerk for a few reasons. You paid child support for the first 3 years, but you stopped afterwards. Why? Isn't it fair that you get to introduce her into your life? Not if she doesn't even know that you're her father, and not if you are not behaving as her father. Quit being a selfish jerk and leave her alone. You can't even support her financially, but want to talk about fairness? Sounds like OP owes 7 years worth of child support before he gets any say. After that, it's still going to be a long prove it that he's serious about being in the kid's life. You're the jerk. 8 to 9 years of child support. He didn't make it the whole first year, and I doubt he actually knows how old his kid really is since he can't even pay child support. Right? We have 2 data points here. 1, this guy is completely disinterested in this kid. And 2, this guy is aware that this reflects really poorly on him. The obvious conclusion is that his only motivation here is to con this new girl into thinking he's a halfway decent person, or at least not someone who will do to her and her potential baby what he did to his ex and hers. The fact that he's clearly only interested in the kid as a human prop to deceive his girlfriend and doesn't register the emotional harm that this would do to his kid pretty solidly indicates that he likely would do it again. You're the jerk. You are not her father. You're just the donor. You paid support for 3 years, which means for 7 years, the mother has been alone, even financially. You don't get to just walk back in because you have a girlfriend you think you might be with forever. This kid is a human being whose life and feelings matter more than you and your selfish desires for making amends. Try therapy to deal with your daddy issues before marriage and having kids with this new woman. My Karen sister demands I pay off her BMW. About a year ago, my sister, G, who's 23, bought a BMW she couldn't afford. She also had a bad habit of getting expensive items for TikTok and Instagram posts. I lucked out on hitting the jackpot with my wife and job. My wife typically makes a lot more money than I do, but she's currently on bed rest with a difficult pregnancy. It has been almost 2 months. It will last the rest of the pregnancy. She has inherited aplastic anemia. While we have some savings, we live within our means with 2 paid-off cars and a nice 2-bedroom house. My dad, who speaks English as a second language, calls me upset that someone is trying to steal my sister's car. It was being repossessed for non-payment. I called my sister and asked what was going on. She first said she was 1 month behind, then admitted she was 3 months behind. She said she would have the money next week. She never called the car dealership to follow up, and the car was sold, sticking my sister with the remaining balance. Now she doesn't have a car and is driving my dad's older Jeep. I have offered my car for her to use, but it's a Toyota, and she rejected it. She's been harassing both of my parents because she says I could have lent her the money, and my wife is lazy about her pregnancy. Now I'm getting unwanted advice about getting my wife back to work since she has worked from home previously. My wife is sick. I'm already worried about her health. She's losing weight around the 6 months and isn't eating well. My sister has told me our mom had 7 kids, and my wife is milking the pregnancy for attention. At this point, I cut my sister off and stopped going to my parents' house, where she lives. A few family members think I'm the jerk for not helping my sister financially with a car that she couldn't afford in the first place. Heck hath no fury like me scorned. This story starts 31 years ago, but the revenge part was pure serendipity that began 2 years ago. I'm going to shorten most parts because it's a crazy ride, but I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all have. I learned a ton on this journey, and part of the reason for this write-up is to share that with others. The beginning. In 1990, when I was just out of middle school and my sister was still in elementary, my dad met his 3rd wife at the only gas station in our town. They soon moved in together, and he abandoned us in our old basement apartment to live in a shanty houseboat that didn't run to live with her. He would show up every other week and give me $40 for groceries. Eventually, someone figured out the situation and called my mom. We went to live with her, which was, believe it or not, worse. My dad and his shanty wife got married in 1991. Not long after, she called me and told me that my dad's brain tumor had returned. It hadn't, and that he couldn't handle the stress of being around us. That the only people he could bear to be around were her and her son, Shorty, who was my age. When I called my dad to ask if this was true, he said it wasn't, and he just couldn't believe that she would say that to begin with. That was one of our last conversations until 2 years ago. The middle. There's not much in this part. I worked my way through college, living in my car from time to time. My dad and I were no contact, but I heard from family that he had bought a house and put his son through some vocational classes. When my grandmother passed, Shorty and shanty wife showed up in a truck and took all the furniture and anything else that wasn't tied down or already gone. Eventually, I went no contact with my dad's side of the family. I struggled for years, decades really, but I made it, and I have a great job and a good family now. The best revenge is living well, right? The pre-end warm-up. 2 years ago, October of 2019, I got a call from my dad's brother, Alan. He told me my dad was in a nursing home in another state. Great. And I needed to go see him because he needed my help. What the heck? Shorty had ghosted him. The nursing home, coincidentally, was about 20 minutes from my house, and I saw an opportunity and I went. The reunion was underwhelming. I didn't want to make amends, but I did want to hear how he wound up dumped and all alone in another state. And it was a really, really good story. Shanty wife had got lung cancer and put my dad in a nursing home before she passed in 2017. Shorty became his power of attorney when she passed and had been visiting my dad, living in my dad's house with his 2 kids, and taking care of my dad's affairs since his mom passed. But now he was MIA, and my dad was worried about him. He asked me to drive the hour and a half to his house to check on everything. That's all he wanted. He never even asked me how I had been. I agreed to go, I think out of morbid curiosity. I'd never even been to my dad's house. I did want to see where he lived with his real family for 30 years. I wanted to see what could have been my life. It was 50 shades of awful. The grass hadn't been cut all summer. You couldn't get to the front door from the overgrowth. There were 3 pickup trucks in the yard. 2 were full of trash. Cabs and beds and back seats, just trash. Mail, clothes, paper, shoes, garbage bags. I couldn't understand it. My dad's handicap-modified SUV was on 4 flats and full of garbage too. I didn't have a key, so I just walked around. From what windows I could look through, the inside was in shambles and hoarded to heck. On the front and carport doors were dozens of notices from the city that they were going to condemn the place. The carport was also hoarded. Boxes and boxes stacked on each other, most rotting from the rain. The yard was full of garbage. Broken Christmas ornaments, more shoes, rusted tools, old toys. There was a letter in the mailbox notifying him that since the house was abandoned, mail would not be delivered anymore. That night, I Googled powers of attorney and how to use them. I went back the next day and showed my bedbound dad the pictures on my phone. He vowed to beat Shorty up, then asked me to help more. I told him I would, but he'd have to sign power of attorney over to me. All of it. Durable, financial, and medical. If he didn't, he could figure this stuff out by himself. He agreed, so I set about finding a lawyer who would drive to another state and do the paperwork in the nursing home. Bless that lawyer for being so good at his job, because all I did was tell him what I knew, and he put together a beautifully bulletproof POA. It was full of stuff I didn't even know I would need. He also filed the paperwork to revoke Shorty's POA, and now I'm unstoppable. We're from a small rural town, and it's the kind of creepy, landlocked place that no matter how long you've been gone or how far away you've been, when you go back, you'll see someone you know. Even if you don't know, you know them. It's like playing 7 Degrees of Everybody, all the time. It's suffocating, but it can also be helpful. The beginning of the end. I got to work the next morning. I didn't know how scorched the earth would be when I finished, and I didn't want Shorty or anyone from his prolific inbred family trying to find me, so I made sure nothing I did had my name on it. I opened a Google account for my dad and got a Google number. I opened a P.O. box for him in his town. I put in a mail forwarding notice. I pulled his credit report. I took the POA to my dad's small town bank, changed the address on his accounts, and got new account numbers. I requested copies of every transaction back to the day Shanty Wife had passed, about 13 months worth. I had to go to the main branch 2 hours from my house the next day to pick the records up. I sat in the lobby all afternoon going through the account. I cornered a service rep and got a crash course in his debits and deposits. This is when I figured out the extent of Shorty's staggering stupidity. My dad got about $5,000 a month in disability and Social Security every month. Twice a week, Shorty was going into a branch and withdrawing cash, all of the cash, for 13 months. And every time he did it, as the POA, he had to sign a form stating that he was acting on behalf of my dad, and that form was notarized by the bank. I went through every withdrawal and got the bank to confirm that every one of them was made by Shorty. Then I went to the house and called a locksmith. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea what was waiting for me there. He got the first door open, and the stench rolled out like a fog bank. We both gagged. 2 locks later, I was so embarrassed by what he had to see and smell, I gave him a $60 tip. And with shiny new keys in hand, I called the cops. I told them I was POA for my dad, was checking on his house, and there were 3 vehicles there that didn't belong to him. He asked me if I knew who they belonged to. I said no, and I wanted them towed. He told me to call a tow company and he would meet them there. They showed up with 2 wreckers. The tow truck guy got out and asked me for a signature. I only signed my first name. As I was signing, he asked, "Do you know Shorty?" Running on pure hatred at this point, I surprised myself. "Do you?" I asked. He said he did, and that he's a jerk. I responded, "He might be. Hey, can you do me a favor? If you see him, will you tell him MNWNM is coming for him?" His bravado evaporated. He knows a crazy when he sees one. They towed the trucks. When everyone was gone, I opened the door in the carport to peek in. The sun was going down and it was dark in the house. I heard something faint, and after some seconds realized it was the roaches and the rats doing their roach and rat stuff. I could smell it all in my hair. I sat on the carport steps and watched the sun go down. I was mad, just so cosmically livid that 72 hours was all it took to dissolve 3 decades, and here I was, stinking and listening to the rats and cleaning everyone else's crap up, taking time away from my family. And for what? I had it coming to Jesus with myself. I could either bow out now or double down. And the thing is, I'm tenacious, to a fault. I had to be to survive, and this was a bone I couldn't put down. The thought of Shorty's life being upended, his only source of income, probably, disappearing literally overnight, and my dad having to hear secondhand from me that he's broke and alone made me absolutely giddy. I desperately wanted them both to lose what they had left, so I decided I was going to triple dog down. That night, I Googled restraining orders, and it was surprisingly easy to get one. I went to the courthouse in my hometown, went to the clerk's office, and told her I needed a restraining order. I filled the form in at a rickety little table while I was there. I wasn't prepared to see a judge that day, but she took the form and said, "Okay, I'll see if the judge is still here." That kind of scared me. She took me to his chambers, and as I was waiting, I looked around and saw he had certificates of appreciation hanging up from various veterans groups. Then I wiped my palms and thought, fish in a barrel. He asked about my dad's stint in the Marines and about the DoD office logo on my sweater. I'm a contractor. He read my form and granted the temporary order. I would have to go back for the permanent one where Shorty would be able to argue against it. Then I went home and Googled biohazard companies and elder treatment statutes in my state. I hired a biohazard company to shovel all the crap out of the house for $7,000. I would have paid double. They found my dad's mummified dog under some pizza boxes in the master bedroom. They sent me pictures and salvaged some papers. Shorty was served during this time and a hearing was set. I got to work collecting and documenting crap. I made pictures and spreadsheets and timelines with cross-references because now they had my full attention. The paid versions of Truthfinder and Trello seriously got me through all this. In my spare time, I went to the nursing home and gave my dad 8x10 copies of the pictures of his dead dog, from every angle. Before court, I went to the police station nearby and told them that I wanted to report an elder mistreatment crime. A white-collar detective came out and told me it was a domestic matter and that since Shorty had been POA, everything he had done was legal. And this was the day I got to teach a small-town detective about the fiduciary responsibilities of a POA. Thanks, Google. I handed him a copy of the statute with the applicable sections highlighted. Then I handed him a thick folder with bank statements, pictures of the hoarded house and the dead dog, a copy of my dad's credit report that showed he was tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and a spreadsheet listing every cash withdrawal with a running total of the stolen amounts. The grand total was just over $130 in cash. That's not including the lost value of the house or the credit cards he opened and used. I told him he could keep that folder since it wasn't the only one I had. Then I told him I would wait for a case number, and I sat down. He came back about 30 minutes later and apologized, said I had a case, and gave me a case number. Then I headed over to the courthouse. This is the end. There were other people there, and I had to wait my turn. And while I was waiting, that stupid jerk walked his sloppy self into the courtroom by himself, and obviously, literally, non-metaphorically, dirty. His shoes were untied, and that turned my giggle box over. Then it was our turn, and we stood up. The same judge asked me some questions, asked him some questions, and asked me if I had any proof. I had a very thick folder of it. The judge asked me if I'd gone to the police. Well, yes, sir, I have. Do you have a case number? As a matter of fact, the order was granted permanently and for life, but not before the judge halted proceedings and told Shorty he needed a lawyer. Someone told me that the courthouse would have a copy of my dad's DD-214 discharge papers, so while I was there, I got a copy of those, because why not? I also used my POA to take Shanty Wife off the deed to the house. That way, if my dad passed and it went into probate, Shorty had no immediate claim. I also went and got copies of my dad's birth certificate and Shanty's wife's death certificate. Technically, stepkids can't request that kind of info, but the clerk who waited on me recognized my dad's name and told me she had hooked up with my Uncle Alan in the 60s and went to my grandparents' funeral. So I got all the forms I wanted. Shanty Wife left my dad $50,000 in life insurance. About $35,000 of that was left since Shorty was spending my dad's money and not his mom's. So I opened an Ally account and transferred every penny over. Then I set up recurring transfers for the monthly deposits. At any given time, there was no more than $100 in his account. I also found a house flipper that paid me enough for the house to pay off his mortgage. That's the thing about probate. There's nothing to fight over if there's nothing there. And I made sure there was nothing there. My dad passed thinking he still owned a house. Speaking of which, this is about the time I found my dad's life insurance policies. They were up to date, and Shanty Wife was the beneficiary. My POA didn't allow me to change beneficiaries, but it allowed me to assign them. And since Shanty Wife was gone, there was technically no beneficiary. This is where the death certificates came in handy. I assigned my sister and me as beneficiaries. Irrevocable too, which means that the only way to change that is for my dad and me and my sister to agree to it. I kept my dad in the dark about all this. The only thing he ever really knew about was the restraining order and his dog. I found out that he had purchased the gravesite next to Shanty Wife and wanted to be buried next to her. That was just never going to happen. I Googled national cemeteries and found out he qualified to be in one since he was a disabled Vietnam-era veteran. So I arranged for that instead. All the cherries on top. My dad passed in June this year, and I was there. He's buried in a national cemetery far away where no one will ever go visit him. The only obituary I ran was on the funeral home's website, and that only for insurance purposes. I wrote it as vague as possible. There was no service. His urn is purple, the color he hated most. I got a call in August from the prosecutor's office in my hometown. The lady on the other end is married to my first cousin because of course she is. That's how it works there. Shorty was arrested just after midnight on July 1st, was still in jail, and had been arraigned on felony elder mistreatment charges. He's facing 10 years in FPMITA prison now. She told me not to expect the trial anytime soon, as it can take up to 3 years for that to happen. I told her that was awesome, since the uncertainty will hopefully haunt him, and after all that, he's still got prison to look forward to. He lost his kids. He lost his dad. I'm spending his mom's money. He lost his free house and trucks. He has no credit and will never be able to get any sort of decent job and will, hopefully for a long time, not be able to find a decent place to live. And I sleep like a baby. My Karen wife won't let my mother come visit us for Christmas. My wife, my mom, and I have a huge point of contention when it comes to visits. We live about a 7-hour plane ride away from my mom, and there hasn't been a single visit in 5 years. My wife and my mom never had a great relationship. It wasn't too terrible, but just very different people, and they get on each other's nerves, so my wife doesn't want her to stay in the house. It makes me sad, but my wife feels the home needs to be a sanctuary, and no one who upsets her should be allowed to stay in her sanctuary, and I chose to support that. Her ideal visit would be my mom staying at a hotel and having designated visiting times. My mom says we can make our rules, but we can't seriously expect her to put her time and effort into traveling to stay at a hotel. I also understand that train of thought. My wife, however, thinks my mom owes it to our kids to make the effort. My mom says my wife is selfish for expecting her to sacrifice her time, effort, and peace of mind just to be treated like a burden. I've told my wife to leave it alone. I called my mom recently to talk, and my wife came over and began making digs about how the kids don't recognize my mom and were asking if I actually have parents. My mom said my wife needed to leave the conversation or she was going to hang up. My wife said it's so sad that my mom won't just come and see her grandkids because she feels entitled to stay in our house. I just snapped and told my wife that she needs to stop acting entitled to my mom's time, energy, the money it would take to visit, and that she's the entitled one. My mom began laughing and my wife looked devastated. I quickly hung up and I tried to talk it out with my wife, but she was furious and said I broke a cardinal rule of marriage by calling her out in front of my mom. I do get that, but I've given her my opinion in private so many times. Oh, there's so much more to this story. Your mom didn't just get relegated to a hotel for nothing. How long does she expect to stay? I've had relatives come visit for 4 to 5 weeks at a time in a small house. After the last visit, I said nope, hotel. The visit ends terribly when it's that long. Having so many adults crammed in a small space for too long isn't pleasant for anyone. I think it's completely reasonable for your wife to ask your mom to stay in a hotel. Visit all day together, but retire to separate places to decompress. I also think it's sad that your mom doesn't come to visit her grandkids. I'm team wife all the way. You're the jerk. My wife feels the home needs to be a sanctuary, and no one who upsets her should be allowed to stay in her sanctuary. This is an eminently reasonable approach. But you are the reason your mom does not see your kids. You could take them and visit her. So your wife is right. You and your mom are not interested enough to make it happen. You're the jerk. Typical mama's boy who refuses to support his wife when it comes to his mama. If I were your wife, this crap would so not fly with me. I'd kick you out in a heartbeat and file for divorce. It doesn't matter what the argument is about. As a good husband, you're supposed to support your wife no matter what, especially when it comes to entitled in-laws like your mother, who honestly sounds insufferable. Is it your mom's house? No. So why should she get to come and stay there whenever she wants against your wife's wishes? Selfish little man babies like you do not deserve to be married, period. Both of my ex-husbands ended up being mama's boys, and look where that got them. Divorced, and both paying me alimony for many years to come. Bottom line, want to keep a beautiful woman? Stop choosing your mom over her. Grow up and be a man. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for accepting my family's Christmas invitation despite my husband being upset? I, female 32, met this wonderful man, Philip, male 36, 2 years ago. We got married 4 months ago. For context, I have a 10-year-old son, Billy, from my previous relationship, and my ex isn't in the picture. I have to admit that Philip's relationship with my family isn't so great. They would disagree on a lot of things. For example, he had an argument with my dad when he said that he was keeping their grandson away from them, but Philip stated he wasn't, and that he couldn't visit with Billy because he had work. I was sick at the time. The latest argument was what made things worse. My mom and sister were discussing natural remedies, they're into this stuff, for my niece, and Philip, he's a pediatrician, called both of them ignorant for not using meds instead, which caused a huge argument and Philip being no longer welcomed at my parents' house. Now, they sent me and Billy an invitation for Christmas, but did not include Philip, which I expected given how strained their relationship has become. I called my mom to confirm that I'll attend, but the minute Philip found out, He went off, saying he could not believe I was fine with my family excluding him, and then agreed to go and leave him behind. I told him it's their celebration, and I don't get to decide their guest list for them. And also, I'm not leaving him behind because he did not have any plans for Christmas. He said he thought that we'd automatically celebrate together, the three of us, but now I'm taking Billy away from him as well. I thought that was a bit melodramatic because it's literally just a few hours at my parents' home, but he insisted it was about principle and respect. We had a big argument, and I said that he basically alienated himself by continually picking arguments with my family, and he started ranting, saying it wasn't about the fact that they didn't invite him, but the fact that I was willing to let him spend Christmas alone without me and Billy. We went back and forth on the issue, but did not seem to reach a solution. My parents are used to spending every major holiday with Billy, so you can see how much pressure I'm getting from both sides here. You're the jerk. He's your husband, and he's done nothing wrong. 1. Your dad picked a fight because he had to work and you didn't defend him. 2. You're encouraging your mom to be an idiot and not be knowledgeable on medications and wanting to do natural healing. And when your husband, as a medical professional, stated the facts, you let them be terrible to him. You think it's okay to leave your husband alone on Christmas because they're being horrible to him. And I'd be upset too that you're not doing anything to defend him when he's done nothing wrong. You're taking their side, and in doing so, it shows that you don't care for your husband. Keep this up, and he will leave. Maybe Mom can calm the situation down with some lavender oil. How are you not outraged that your parents left your husband out of the invitation to spend Christmas with them? And how could you possibly contemplate leaving your husband alone at Christmas? Do you actually want to be married to him? You accepted an invitation which excludes him, and you think this is reasonable? You're the jerk. You're the jerk. You're right. You don't get to decide their guest list for them. However, you do get to decide whether or not to spend Christmas with your husband. Every married couple I know would automatically expect to spend Christmas together. Not the jerk. Your husband had no right to talk to your parents like that. He's a fraudster who capitalizes off the pharmaceutical industry. I can't tell you how many so-called doctors have told me that my kids need to be on all that crap. I tell them the same thing every time. God put us on this world thousands of years ago, and we never needed this stuff before. Why the heck would we need it now? Oh yeah, we don't. You just want to line your pockets by taking advantage of me and my family. Son having seizures? Oh, he needs to be on these 3 different medications, which will run you $1,000 a month. Daughter's blood sugar too high? Oh, she needs to be on this and that, which costs $700 a month, and test her glucose every 12 hours. When did people stop trusting in the power of prayer and decide to fall victim to the lies of these fraudsters? I feed my kids natural diets, which consists mostly of fruits and veggies. You'd be surprised how many high-quality fruits and veggies are now sold at the dollar store. Don't believe all the organic nonsense. Any fruits and veggies are 1,000 times better than the crap they feed your kids at school. This is also part of why I homeschool all 6 of my kids. I refuse to allow them to be taught the false, his story that is taught in schools now. I teach my kids the truth of how we got here, what our purpose is, the light work that we were put here to do. I teach them that they are in fact star seeds who are here to change the world. 5 of my 6 kids are indigo children, and 1 is not an indigo, unfortunately. He also doesn't look a thing like his siblings, which really was a disappointment to me. He gets angry every time I tell him that even though he's not special like the others, he can still make a difference in the world. It just won't be as powerful as his siblings. He's the one that doctors told me needs to be on antidepressants, and I tell them every time that no, he doesn't need that. He's just disappointed that he's not an indigo, and he has to accept it. I can tell they look down on me for my beliefs, which is unfortunate since so many are awakening to the light. In truth, love, and light, namaste. And this is why I believe that not everyone out there is cut out to be having kids. You can say that again. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. You spend Christmas with your spouse and your kid. In-laws inviting you but excluding them is way out of line. I don't think Philip's gonna be sticking around with her too much longer. Got fired from a place I was never employed at. So I work at a place where the uniform is a stunningly fashionable red polo with black trim. This occurred at a store where they wear the slimming black with a lime green trim. I'm on my way home from work one winter day and decide to stop by the grocery store. As it is winter, I'm wearing my winter jacket, which is a very vibrant purple, and because it's kind of warm out, it's unzipped to reveal my work shirt. I also have my headphones in, a headband on, and a bright blue shoulder bag, aka I'm clearly a customer. So I'm kneeling down in front of some drinks, pondering which one I want to buy, when this woman starts getting up in my business. I shuffle over, thinking maybe she wants to look at the drinks as well, and start pushing a couple in my basket. Then I hear the dreaded, "Excuse me?" I glance around, hoping she's going at someone else, but to no avail. I look up, pulling out one of my earbuds and say, "Sorry, am I in your way?" Because my parents raised me to be polite. "Where's the coconut oil?" I just blink and shrug. "I don't know, sorry. Over there maybe?" And I point over towards the baking aisle. "What do you mean you don't know? Are you that incompetent at your job?" Well, now I'm ticked off. I clearly don't work there, and for the record, I'm very competent at my job. My job not at this grocery store. "Lady, I don't work here. Go find someone else." "You're wearing a uniform. You have to help me." "For a store down the street, not here. I don't have to help you with anything. Now leave me alone." And I start to walk off. But she screams at me as I'm leaving. "I'm going to report you to your manager." To which my mature self tells her, "Go for it." Now I finish up my shopping and I'm using the self-checkout because between work and this Karen, I've had more social interaction than my introverted self can handle when I hear, "There she is. That's her." I look up to see who's screaming, and lo and behold, there's Karen, and she's dragging this poor sap along with her over to me. "She wouldn't help me. I want her fired." "Ma'am, she doesn't work here." "I don't care. I want her fired anyway. She's useless and rude." "Ma'am, she doesn't work here. She works somewhere else. I literally don't have the authority to fire her." "Are you telling me you're not going to fire her, even though she was rude?" At this point, me and Buddy make eye contact, and a moment of understanding passes, as it does between fellow retail staff, and I give him a small nod, and he sighs. "Very well. Miss, I'm afraid it's just not working out. I'm going to have to let you go." I just nod solemnly. "I understand. I'll be going now then." And I gather up my groceries and go to leave, and Karen just has the biggest grin on her face. And that is the story of how I got fired from a store I never worked at a single day in my life. Edit. To those accusing me of stealing someone else's story, I didn't. These Karens are all over, and this same situation is happening all over. Also, for those saying that Buddy shouldn't have done what he did, he was a trainee, not a manager. Just a poor sap who was suddenly way over his head with a belligerent woman that we both just wanted to go away. Never encourage these idiots. Never let them think they actually got someone fired for crap like this, because they'll just escalate from there. Fussy guest demands discount for lack of parking. I maliciously comply. On sold-out weekends, our already limited parking becomes even more limited. Guest and her husband arrive early evening. Car park is already full, so they park in front of the guest door to check in, blocking other vehicles in. Check-in is non-eventful. I rattle off my spiel and hand the guest her keys. Guest walks off, then stops all of a sudden. As she turns to face me again, I know that she's about to complain about something. We all know the pose. Eyes widen as they ready themselves to plead their case as they point and wiggle their index finger in the air at shoulder height. Game on. Guest. "You need more parking spots. There's not enough for 40 rooms. Your car park is already full. I reserved a space." Me. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but our parking is on a first-come, first-served basis. We do not reserve spaces. If the car park is full, all of the on-street parking is free." Her. "Well, there should be 40 spaces for all 40 rooms." Side note, we have 12 spaces at the front of our property, which stretches from the street to our front entrance. Local council regulations state that we only need 1 space per 4 rooms. We beat the regulations by 2. Me. "I understand your frustrations, Mrs. Nitpicker, but our plans to construct an underground parking garage have been delayed due to lockdown-induced shovel shortage. Not a shovel to be found within 100 kilometers. It should be dug out and fully operational by the time our city hosts the Olympics in 2032, though." Her. "You should extend your car park until then, so every room has an assigned space. I think we should be given a discount for no parking." Me. The owner did consider just knocking this place down completely and making it into a public car park, but then he realized that we would have no rooms left for our guests, which would lower our property rating. So we decided to keep things as they are for the time being. Her. And the discount I asked for? I type away furiously while umming and ahhing for dramatic effect. Me. I've applied the discount to your folio. I've calculated the total amount it will cost you to park on the street for your 7-day stay and have deducted that amount from your bill. Is there anything else I can help you with, ma'am? Her. Huffs and gives me a smug smile. Well, I should think so. Guest walks off. As I stated earlier, street parking is free 24/7. Her total discount was $0. She never even noticed. Update to my nephew stealing cans from my shed. To recap, as many previous readers know, my nephew stole a ton of cans from my shed after breaking into it and cashed them in at the bottle drop for about $200. My sister and brother-in-law acted like I was a jerk for wanting the money back for the cans and damages. I ended up pressing charges because they refused to pay, and things turned pretty ugly. I filed a small claims lawsuit, and they had to pay me back for the cost of damages, theft, emotional damages for constant harassment, and the cost of the lawsuit itself, all adding up to $500, which finally made my sister and brother-in-law raise a white flag and actually start parenting their kids. My nephews got all of their privileges taken away and were forced by a judge to work community service, which they hated and had to be forced just to complete. They didn't get more than 100 hours each because I had been repaid by their parents when we settled out of court, so the judge pretty much fast-tracked the case. The nephews ended up picking up garbage and doing work around several local parks, and the man directing them I heard was a retired drill sergeant, so they had no fun whatsoever. My eldest nephew constantly showed his issues with authority and got into screaming matches with everyone who told him to work. His father had to be called over just to make the boy pick up a rake. The kid openly blamed me for his predicament, and his brothers were both initially on his side. But after a while, they realized that he's just crazy and entitled, and they no longer wanted any part of it. So my two younger nephews stopped following his lead because it finally clicked just how in the wrong they were. Problem is that my sister and brother-in-law blamed me for the divide in their family, which didn't end well for them as no one in the family was on their side about it. Everything was put on them and their bad parenting, and without me to blame, they just became silent and bitter. Half the family doesn't want to associate with them now, and their own kids are divided because the eldest refuses to change. It got so bad that my eldest nephew resorted to something so incredibly dumb that you're not going to want to believe it. In the middle of the night, he snuck out and assaulted my house with a pair of his dad's claw hammers. I say a pair because he literally had one in each hand. The first thing he did was start smashing the new lock on my shed, and it didn't break. But he heavily damaged it to the point it was no longer usable, and I had to later remove it with a bolt cutter. He also did a lot of damage to the shed door with the hammer claws. I awoke to the sounds of the hammers and called the police after peeking out of my bedroom window and seeing someone outside hitting the shed. Though I didn't realize it was him at first because he had his face covered with a creepy-looking mask. He saw the bedroom lights come on and chucked one of the hammers through my window. There was broken glass everywhere, and I'm lucky I didn't cut my feet on any of it because I was barefoot. Then my nephew started beating on my back door with the remaining hammer. He did major damage, breaking the knob and the window on the door, and also tore into the door itself with the hammer claw. I was worried the door wouldn't hold out, so I yelled the police were on their way, and he took off before they arrived. The night vision on my cameras showed that it was him. He had a mask on, but he was wearing his school hoodie, as well as his Nike shoes that were also pretty identifiable since his brothers don't have a pair like them. His fingerprints were also on the hammer he threw at my window. My nephews had already all been fingerprinted when they were arrested the first time, so police matched the ones on the hammer to him. When the cops came for my eldest nephew, he obviously denied it was him, but there's no one else it could have been. The other hammer was found in his room, along with the clothes and the mask that he wore, all of which were taken as evidence. The mask was of a Star Wars character I was told is called the Grand Inquisitor. This time, though, his parents did nothing to try and protect him. And they didn't try to pass the blame on me either. They just let their son be taken away screaming. I wasn't there to see the arrest, But I was told by my sister that my eldest nephew was switching back and forth from crying that he didn't do anything wrong to screaming that it was all my fault and he had to get back at me. The boy had to go through a serious mental evaluation and was found to be potentially bipolar. Doesn't really excuse what he did though. Later on, when he was properly diagnosed as bipolar, he started blaming everything he did wrong on that and acted like he should be vilified just for getting treatment for it. But he ended up having a month-long stint in juvenile hall. They got my nephew properly medicated and he pleaded guilty to forego court again in exchange for more community service and mandatory counseling, as well as probation this time. His dad came to my house and personally replaced the window and the door, though he barely said a word to me while doing it. My two younger nephews are still excluding their older brother from pretty much everything, and he still hasn't apologized for attacking my home either. He's also unfortunately repeating a school year because of how badly his grades tanked, which his parents are still very unhappy about. My two younger nephews dropped by on their own in July to personally apologize to me. They said that they always just followed their brother's lead and he made everything they were doing seem so fun, but the punishments for the crimes are not worth the kind of fun they were having, and they don't want to do it with him anymore. They want their fun uncle back and asked if we could start over. I said we can, but they'll have to earn back my trust, which they happily agreed to. My eldest nephew had his 17th birthday a few months ago and basically got nothing, not even a cake. It was part of his punishment for what he had done. I can only imagine how much money he's cost his parents in the past year alone. He led his brothers to steal from me and then destroyed my bedroom window and back door. I imagine in total, with the lawsuit I'd previously filed and replacing the door and the window cost them over $1,000. Doors and windows are not cheap. Meanwhile, my youngest nephew had his birthday a month after that and got a new mountain bike among his gifts. This really upset my eldest nephew and he slashed the tires on the bike, which landed him in even more trouble. I know a thing or two about fixing bikes, so I went out and bought new tubes and tires for the bike and put them on it. So the bike is fine and my nephew thanked me a lot for fixing it. My eldest nephew resorted to trying to run away because he wasn't being enabled anymore. He just walked out, got on his bike with a backpack full of stuff and rode off. His parents quickly reported him missing because he left a goodbye letter that basically blamed me and his bipolar for all his problems. In the letter, he stated that he can't wait till he's 18 to get away from all of us. So he was doing us a favor by getting rid of himself sooner. But he came back 3 days later without his bike or backpack and looking beat up. He wouldn't tell anyone what happened. We still don't know, but he was chewed out for continuously using me as a scapegoat for his personal issues because blaming me was the first thing he did after he got back. I didn't make him steal from me. I didn't make him attack my house. I didn't make him run away. That was all him. And he nearly ended up back in juvie for running off because he violated his probation. But he got off easy somehow. Currently, he spends his days pretty much in his room when not in school or doing chores or going to counseling. He finished his community service, but his probation will last until he's 18. He got some lenience for being diagnosed as bipolar, but it couldn't get him off the hook. And believe me, he tried many times. Once they told him what was wrong with him, it became his excuse for everything. But plenty of people go their whole lives with that same mental condition and never do the kinds of things he did. I've been mending things with my two younger nephews, but I don't want to be around the eldest at all, and the feeling is clearly mutual on his part. I've only seen him once in person the past few months, and he glared at me with more hate than I've ever seen from anyone before stomping away. He can't paint me as the villain anymore without being called out on it, so there isn't much he can do other than just try and get through this. For the most part, he's totally shut down since school started. I'm told he barely speaks, even at school. My other nephews tell me he's getting laughed at and ostracized, which I don't think is going to help him get better. My sister and brother-in-law are also not on their best terms with me right now as well, but they can't exactly put any blame on me either. They know it was all on them and their bad parenting. I basically forced them to be more active in their kids' lives, which they should have been doing already. They complain a lot about being tired from work and keeping an eye on their kids, so whenever we talk as of late, it's always awkward and forced. They don't come to my house or me to theirs, but we do see each other at my parents' house, and our mother demands we be civil there, which I have no problem with. My two younger nephews have regained most of their privileges. They got their TV and video games back, but my eldest nephew isn't allowed on them at all. I'm told he's got some electronic entertainment in his room, but what kind? I don't know. I just know he spends most of his time in there unless he has to be somewhere else. My eldest nephew is also not welcome pretty much anywhere in the family anymore. I've recently heard from my parents that they don't even want to see him on Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve this year because they're sick of his behavior and petty thievery. I guess I can understand that, but even I feel it's a bit harsh. My sister and brother-in-law do as well because they're threatening to boycott if he can't come to either holiday. I can't stand that kid and would not want him in my house either, so I can understand why they've made that decision. But I don't think excluding him from everything and everyone is going to make him better. It's going to take a long time for my eldest nephew to mend bridges, if they can even be mended at all. The way things stand, he may try running off again once he's of age, unless the last time scared him too much to try it again. But hopefully things will get better for him in time, if it's not too late to fix his behavior. I may not seem like it, but he's still my nephew and I care, but I'm kind of powerless to do anything. So for now, the most I can do is just keep my nose out of it and offer support where I can. Don't touch anything that isn't on the schedule. Okay, a little bit of context. I work in a manufacturing plant for a multinational company producing microchips. I'm the shift lead engineer on night shift for the front end of the week, Sunday through Wednesday. So there's very little oversight from management except when I see them in the morning on my way out the door. The machines we work on are huge, think Greyhound bus size, and require fairly strategic planning to get the most we can out of them. In recent months, the day shift team has been slacking on their scheduled maintenance items. Normally, this isn't a big deal since we are understaffed, just like every other company in America right now, and we pick up the slack where we can on night shift. The machines run 24 hours a day, so if you have to pass work to the incoming shift, it isn't an issue, and everyone tends to help out everyone. The problem comes in when day shift or the other end of the week move scheduled maintenance off of their shift but don't move it into our scheduled work calendar. When the machines reach their critical threshold, they shut themselves down until the work is performed. This is normally at midnight on days I'm working. Well, as it happens, this has been occurring more and more over the past few weeks, and I've been letting my senior manager know that's why we've been seeing an availability drop, not from our lack of effort. He's a newer senior manager, so I tried to explain the critical thresholds to him and how we need to at least keep the calendar accurate so we don't have any surprises by machines shutting themselves down unexpectedly. He didn't really seem to want to listen to this and brushed me off, telling me, "If it isn't on the calendar, don't work on that machine." Cue malicious compliance. On Sunday night when I get into work, the schedule is completely empty, not uncommon for weekends. But wouldn't you know it, 3 maintenance items had been moved from the back end of the week and were never rescheduled. So at midnight, 3 machines shut themselves down for maintenance. But I've been told if it isn't on the calendar, I can't touch those machines. I walk up to the production floor and tell all my technicians that we won't be working on any of those machines as they aren't scheduled for us to complete. And per the area senior manager, we don't touch anything unless it's on the calendar. They've been getting more and more frustrated recently with this, so their eyes light up as I tell them we won't be completing any of the work. Then comes Monday morning. I tell the incoming shift and my direct manager about the machines, and they have a good laugh about the situation. It's only roughly 2 hours of work per machine, so I didn't completely do over the day shift. And then I run into my senior manager on my way out the door and casually let him know we have 3 machines that have been down for 6 hours and need to be added to the schedule so somebody can start working on them. His eyes just about pop out of his head and he says, "How could you let 3 machines sit down for half the night and not even start on them? Were there other machines down that stopped you from getting to them?" And I responded with, "Nope, you just told me if it isn't on the calendar, don't touch it." His face went beet red and I saw the vein on his temple start throbbing, but he knew I was right. Since then, the calendar has been pretty dang accurate, and if I see a tool going critical, he's now informed me that I'm allowed to work on it to keep the product flowing. If you want to sit around, you can do it from home. This isn't my tale, but one of a friend of mine, Craig. This took place about 10 years ago. He worked for an IT company maintaining the mainframe and other technical needs throughout the building, along with electrical safety checks. He was a bit OCD, and this helped him by being on top of things that were needing sorted. He had custom spreadsheets documenting the last 10 years of repairs on everything he was responsible for. This sheet, by the 5-year mark, had already given him a fairly good idea of what items were likely to fail, either due to updates or physical parts failing due to the 24-hour running of the system. There was a period of a week where he was ahead and decided to get ahead of his upcoming repairs, checking the items and replacing what needed to be done. 2 weeks later, he was sitting in his office when the VP arrived, and on the rounds, she noticed that all 3 times she passed, he was sitting idle in his office. Outraged he was being paid for doing nothing, she had his boss pull him up. Boss: VP noticed you haven't done much today and pulled your work log for the last few weeks. You've only logged 4 jobs in 2 weeks. Craig: I've been ahead for the last couple weeks, just knocking off jobs before they came up to make time for the bigger jobs that are about to come up next week. Boss: Well, you're paid to work, not sit about. If you want to sit about, do it at home. Craig, shrugging internally: Well, I've got some holiday time to take. If you give me a week to organize the cover and take care of the large jobs, I'll take time off. Boss: Deal. Off you go. Enjoy your holiday. Craig: But what about the work next week? Boss: No buts. You're on holiday. Effectively immediately. I'll clear it up with HR. Now off you go. Cue malicious compliance. Craig decided to not try and reiterate just how much work was due next week and went on holiday for 2 weeks, turning his work phone off. In that 2 weeks, due to a lack of warning, the tech from another center that usually covered wasn't available. At the same time, there were safety issues, software updates, and other minor issues that were expected, not to mention the dozens of unexpected issues that came up. When Monday after his holiday came up, he turned his phone on to find 20+ texts. His phone inbox was full of voicemails, and he had dozens of emails from panicking management. He got into work and was set upon. Where have you been? We needed you. XYZ all failed while you were gone, and we didn't have cover. Craig smiled and reminded his boss about the conversation 2 weeks prior, and also had a coworker that overheard the entire thing back him up. After that, not a single manager dared to question his slow week, not even the VP. Challenge accepted, challenge won. Karen demands Christmas dessert samples. Context: For every holiday, my mother would ask the women in the family, my sisters, sister-in-law, my wife, my female cousins, to send samples of the desserts they planned to bring to the celebration for testing and to see if these desserts could make it to the food menu. My wife has been complaining about my mother deliberately rejecting every dessert sample she sent. So many times, my mother has told her that she's being honest and keeping the guests' best interests at heart. Yet, my wife still thought that my mother was deliberately excluding her since 2 of her dessert samples were rejected before. For this year's Christmas, my mother is doing the same thing, but this time, she told every woman who's participating to make a cookie sample and send it to her for testing. My wife took it as a challenge, and to be honest, she worked really hard to make a good sample and sent it to my mother days ago, and the results just came in yesterday. I came home from work and found my wife upset. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me that my mother rejected the sample she sent and decided to exclude her from baking from the menu list and the menu for Christmas this year. I didn't know what to say, but then she told me that she was backing out of the invitation to attend Christmas with my family. I was stunned when I heard her make this statement. I tried to talk to her, but she said it was done. I called her unreasonable to decide to bail on the whole family over some cookie sample. That's just crazy and quite unreasonable. We had a full-on argument about it, and she stated that my mother caused this, but I told her that my mother is pretty serious and careful about the food she offers to the guests, since we are going to have relatives coming from all sides of the country. She told me to stop mentioning it. Later, I heard her cry, despite telling her that her baking is amazing and people have preferences, that's all. Am I the jerk for insisting that her decision was unreasonable? Info: If you're asking whose cookie sample made it to the menu, the answer is my sister and my 2 cousins. Info: A few things to put on here. 1. My wife wasn't the only one whose sample was rejected. We have sister-in-laws, my brother's wife, and my younger sisters. My mother did not force anyone to participate. It was up to whoever wanted to take part. 3. This is just about the dessert, since my mother tends to be very careful in this category. But for other types of foods, dishes, appetizers, salads, stuff like that, it's all welcome, as she stated. Update: Great, so I just got off the phone with my brother, and he told me that his wife is doing the same thing as my wife, and that she has decided to back out of the invitation to spend Christmas with family as well. Turns out my wife must have told her about her decision, and she decided to follow her lead. My brother is upset, saying my wife is encouraging his wife to do this. I see that the problem has just gotten bigger now. Who knows, my younger sister might join in and decide not to go as well. I don't know how this got out of control so quickly. I guess we'll try to have a discussion with my mother about this and see how it goes. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but for years and years, your mother has demanded that all the women, why not the men too, in your family send in samples. For years and years, your wife has tried her hardest to appease your mother, had pushed herself to the limit, and has been left completely and utterly demoralized each and every time by a humiliating tradition enforced by the holiday tyrant. And, even worse, her shame was publicly put on display each and every year as other family members would no doubt notice that, once again, her food was not chosen. Finally, after producing something she was unbelievably proud of, she was once again left embarrassed and most likely deeply hurt, as she was deemed not good enough for yet another year. This is the straw that broke the camel's back, and she decides she's had enough of her humiliation and that she will not give her cruel mother-in-law the satisfaction of seeing her discomfort on such a big day. She makes a boundary that many would have made a long time prior, and her husband tells her she's unreasonable for setting up boundaries? Dude, come on. You know you're the jerk. You're the jerk. I'd never in a million years bake samples to be approved. I'm showing up with my food. Eat it or not, I really don't care. Your mom is the jerk and very, very weird. You're the jerk. Your mom is also a jerk who takes samples in and makes others feel bad because of their cooking. This tradition sucks, and I get why OP's wife doesn't want to go. Not the jerk. Did y'all read it all? Yes, she asks all the women, but it's always a yes or no thing. You either want to or you don't. Simple. This only happens in the dessert category, and you can bring whatever for any other category. She doesn't care. This idea is good because it saves the wife from even greater humiliation when she says it's good, but it's not, and she brings it to the function and no one eats it. If her food isn't good, why should everyone be forced to eat it? She can literally bring something else that isn't dessert. The mother is being honest and not biased because obviously other people were not chosen. Like, I've been to so many functions, and there's always that one plate of utter rubbish, and my mother would tell us to always try it so the owner of the plate doesn't feel bad. Not the jerk. And your wife should stop sending samples. Your wife is married to you, not your mom. And you cannot get mad if she stops sending samples either, because it's clearly a waste of time since it's likely going to be like the same 2 to 4 family members. Keep it real. You know this. I understand the pride because she wants to feel included, but it's been 3 times and it's a blow mentally. Definitely get your wife an extravagant gift for Christmas and let it be known it's for all the delicious cookies she's giving you all year long. Cookies like love, care, passion, etc. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP and his mom or his wife? Please let us know. Just let people bring what they want. His mom's really overcomplicating this. Am I the jerk for telling my dad that I'll gladly spend Christmas with him if he gives me back my college fund as a Christmas gift? To make this brief, I, male 32, had issues with my dad after my mom passed and my stepmom came along. I hated a lot of decisions that were made, but what has left a long-lasting impact was taking my college fund to pay for my stepbrother's surgeries. Unfortunately, he's passed on. He passed last year at the age of 16 from a chronic heart problem. I keep my distance, but still see my grandparents and uncles and aunts, cousins, etc. With the holiday season coming up, Dad started talking to me through some relatives, close relatives. He went on about his overwhelming feelings of loneliness, his upcoming divorce, and invited me to spend Christmas with him because he's alone and heartbroken. As a response, I told him I'll gladly spend Christmas with him if he gives back my college fund in a form of a Christmas gift. He and the others didn't like my response. He thought this was harsh, and my relatives said that I was a judgmental, petty, greedy jerk to say this to him after he's lost so much. They said he did all he could to save his stepson, my stepbrother, which they described as noble and that he doesn't owe me a thing. I went home after a big argument with my uncle who came at me for what I said. Now I feel like crap. Maybe I should have just calmly, politely declined the invitation and not said this to him and made him feel guilty for how he handled my stepbrother's situation. Edit. I just took a look and I see that I'm getting a ton of comments here. To answer a few questions. 1. The fund was made by my dad. Mom was a stay-at-home mom and didn't work, but they both agreed that this fund would go towards my education. 2. I was able to get in college. I started working to pay my way and had some relatives help, but my uncle did so much for me, which is why I said I felt bad when he berated me. He holds a special place in my life, and he's the last person I want to disappoint or let down. Edit 2. Okay, for those who are saying the fund wasn't mine, whose fund was it then? I really don't get this. Maybe you can expand on how exactly the fund wasn't mine and to whom it belonged. Also, for those that think I'm being cruel to my dad after he lost so much, I try not to go out of my way to be mean or malicious. Matter of fact, I want little to nothing to do with him, but all this time, I've been playing nice to please my uncle and relatives, but that's it. Info. Where did the money in the college fund come from? Was any of it from your late mother? Because if it was 100% of your dad's money, that's very different than if he spent money your late mother set aside for her own kid's education on his new stepkid. Regardless, I think the problem is that your dad didn't prioritize you until he was lonely and now he wants your company. The college fund is a symptom of that, and it's not fair for dad to brush it under the rug. Edit, because people are misunderstanding. I'm not saying a stay-at-home mom doesn't contribute. Knowing this information, I believe that half of whatever was saved during OP's mother's lifetime was her contribution and should not have been spent by his dad. What I meant to get at with my question was to see if it was money that dad had saved up after mom's passing, for example. This is such a difficult situation. I do feel for OP, but I also understand dad's position, and I'd hope that OP eventually finds it in his heart to forgive dad. But honestly, if this is happening in the USA, then this country's horrendous healthcare and higher education systems are 100% at fault. They leave folks with debt and bankruptcy, and often with impossible choices to make. I'm so sorry for OP and his dad. No jerks here. Yeah, I can't get on board with OP's line of thinking about the college fund. Was his father supposed to let his stepson pass so OP can go to college and be debt-free? Not even a close choice for OP's father, in my opinion. I'm hoping OP is just young, and one day he'll see how difficult the situation was. Not the jerk. I don't understand these "you're the jerk" comments. There was a college fund in place, and it was used for someone other than you. Definitely not the jerk. Dad used the college fund to try to save someone's life. That's not a jerk move, it's a desperate father move. Like someone else said in another comment, Dad prioritized issues, not the kids. And he was the one that set up the fund. He did not use any inheritance left by OP's mom. Sorry, OP, but you're the jerk. I'm going to get hate for saying this. I'm shocked at how many people will say people don't have to split or give a college fund to a step-sibling, but will tell you that you're the jerk for being upset. Your step-sibling had 2 parents. You had 1. That parent took from your figure and prioritized his wife's kid and hung you out to dry. Would it have been nice to give them the money to save your step-sibling? Maybe, but that's not the question. Your parents or dad set aside money for you, and then your dad and stepmom used it on someone else. Your dad is a complete jerk to prioritize another kid over his own. Once it's set aside for your education, it's no longer his money to take back and definitely wasn't your stepmom's to use. Your dad's bad decisions are coming back to bite him. Now he's lonely because of his decisions, and I don't blame you for telling your dad exactly what he needs to do now to have you back in his life. Not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his dad? Please let us know. I think what parents should do is not tell their kids about the college fund until it's time to spend it. That way, if an emergency comes up and they have to use part of it, their kid won't get mad at them. Stepdad is demanding I help my stepsister buy a house. I'm 29, female. When I was about 10, my mom married my stepfather. I have an older brother, Luke, who was 15. My stepfather had Amy and Ada, who were 12 and 11. We didn't come from a privileged background. My mom was a minimum wage worker and my dad was absent. Our stepfather had a very good income. Their deal was that they wouldn't combine finances and they would each contribute equally to the household, and then each takes care of their kids with their spare money. So my mom never had anything for us, and my stepfather was spending big on his kids. This included holidays, which Luke and I were excluded from. Stepfather would pay for mom, but not for us. Luke and I also shared a room, even though Amy and Ada had their own rooms, and we had a guest room. Because stepfather insisted that he was paying more towards the house, so my mom's share would only get her one room for the kids. Luke and I were constantly teased for this situation by the 3 of them as we grew up. My mom always said that we should be thankful because if it wasn't for our stepfather, we would not be living in a nice home in a good neighborhood. Anyway, Luke and I became determined to be able to take care of ourselves so that we wouldn't need to take nonsense from anyone. We've both done quite well with our careers and finances, and we are in very good shape. Since turning 18 and moving out, my relationship with the three of them has been very limited. I wouldn't call us friends, but we can exist peacefully if we are in the same place. I visited my mom recently, and my stepfather mentioned that Amy wants to buy a house now that she's pregnant. He asked me if I'm able to help out a little with the deposit. The house is £500,000, and she needs at least £150,000 deposit. She has $100,000 so far, $25,000 on her own, $25,000 from her mom, and $50,000 from her stepfather. He was asking if Luke and I can help cover the extra $50,000, and he said he'd pay us back as part of the inheritance eventually. I said no. He insisted that Luke and I both own our houses outright and with our incomes, so we should be able to help. I said whether I can or not is irrelevant. My answer is no. He reminded me that Luke and I each gave £10,000 to our cousin for buying a house as a gift. Amy is my sister, and he's offering to pay us back. I said that was our choice then. This is my choice now. He insisted that we should be willing to help out our family if we're able to. I replied back, like how you helped me and Luke when we were kids? Everyone just went quiet when I said this. After a while, he said if we went back in time, he'd have done things differently, treated all four of us equally. I said that's good of you, but doesn't make you entitled to my money now. He said he knows he's not entitled. That's why he's asking and promising to pay it back. I said the answer is still no, not entitled to a loan either. My mom later told me I could have turned him down without being a jerk or bringing up childhood, which he already feels guilty about. Am I the jerk? Absolutely not the jerk. And I think you did turn him down without bringing up your childhood, but he kept pressuring you, so it's totally understandable that you told the truth. OP. Exactly. I only brought up our childhood after he tried to guilt me about how we're family and should help each other. Initially, it was just a simple rejection. I don't think he feels guilty. He only regrets treating you guys badly now that you and Luke have turned out successful. He's guilty he got called out on being a penny pincher about what kids deserve, not that he actually did it to them. He's upset that he's facing consequences for his behavior, not that he is ashamed he did it. Not the jerk. He needed to hear it. If he brings it up again, tell him he's welcome to use all the money he saved excluding you and your brother from the family on his daughter's house. He's an entitled jerk, and honestly, your mom is a jerk too for allowing her own kids to be subjected to that unfairness. For what it's worth, my dad remarried when I was 11, and my stepsister is a year older. My dad and stepmom, even though my dad made much more money, ensured that the two of us girls got everything the other did, almost to the point of comedy. If my stepsister wanted a shirt, my stepmom would grab one for me in a different color to make sure things were fair. That was probably over the top, but I admire them for making our home feel like we both belong there equally. When companies start tracking your productivity, beat the system. My company decided to implement third-party software to track employee productivity, and they started this BS way before lockdown and remote work. All technology teams were being monitored, and I worked on a product team under technology. The main metric they used was how much new code was being written, which is silly because even programmers don't write new code very often. Updated code didn't count, and those were most of the tickets I managed, and meanwhile, I was always fixing other people's code, and I was the go-to person for any escalations and releases. When this first started, I saw a dozen emails about writing more code, and I thought it was a joke until I got an unscheduled meeting with the department head. He scolded me for having written zero code that month, and despite pushing that my role doesn't exactly require me to write new code, he said, "Sorry, this is the new world." Exact words. Fine. I found some old code libraries that no one used anymore but were still active. Every month, I would copy the libraries, delete them, and then replace them. I tested it out, and that counted as new code. Before all this, I was a top performer up for promotion, but my reviews from before didn't count anymore, and all that mattered were these metrics. I tried to keep my shenanigans under the radar, but one month, I did the delete and replace move twice because I forgot if I did my monthly coding quota, and did it again just in case. Well, that quarter I won an award for Most Prolific Engineer, and it came with $2,000. That got the attention of my manager, who was luckily a cool guy and openly complained about how stupid the productivity tracking software was. He knew I wasn't writing code, and neither was he, so I finally told him my secret. He actually thought it was hilarious, and he himself had been just deleting and replacing lines of code to bypass the quota, but he didn't think about doing entire libraries. I knew I wouldn't get in trouble with him, and he even nominated me for a recognition award, which came with another $1,000 in gift cards. I did eventually get promoted, over 6 months later than initially discussed, but things got even worse with the company monitoring productivity during the lockdown. It was so bad to the point where they were logging how many times you were away from your computer for more than 5 minutes. People actually got fired for taking too many breaks between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Let's just say I was taking my laptop everywhere out of paranoia. It didn't increase productivity, but it for sure hurt my morale. Thankfully, I got the heck out of there. The rest of my team was not so lucky, but I still get texts from my old manager and team about how they're using my shenanigans. Ultimately, I got a nice $3,000 in awards, $15,000 from the promotion, and a lifetime of drinks from my team for beating the system. Am I the jerk for letting my father go hungry for more than a day? Growing up, I was forced to do all the chores while my 2 brothers weren't. I didn't come to no contact with my parents because it's necessary not to cut contact with them. I'm the only one who lives in the same city. The others live too far away. On Saturday, last week, my parents called me saying that there was a problem with the electrical part in their house, and they begged me to let them stay at my house for 4 days, as they would be spending a lot of money to fix it and they couldn't afford to stay at the hotel. I agreed, but said that I had my routine and would not be helping my father. They agreed. On the first day, it was pretty okay, and my mom did everything for my dad. The next day, my mom had to make an emergency trip to her sister. Her sister paid for her to go, and she lives in another city, in the morning. I went to work and had lunch at the company. When I got home, my father said, "Wow, I thought you would never come home. Can you make something for me? I just ate what your mother made for lunch in the morning." Keep in mind that my fridge was full and my father knows how to cook, in addition to knowing how to use the cell phone and internet. He just didn't want to do it because my mother does everything. Me. "Look, Dad, I'm really tired. Besides, I'm leaving here in an hour." It was 6 p.m. He started to complain, saying that he would get hungry, that I should make him food for lunch and dinner, blah blah blah. I just replied, "You have hands, you have a telephone. There's a pizzeria contact on the fridge if you don't want to make food, but I won't make it." The night was good and I only returned at 1 a.m. My father was already sleeping and Mom didn't come back. I woke up late, so I just ran to work without even saying hello to him, so I didn't pay attention to anything. As the day before, I ate at work. When it was about 4 p.m., my mother called me screaming, saying that my father was dizzy with hunger because I refused to make him anything and I knew he doesn't do those things, so it wouldn't cost me anything to make him even a basic snack, but I preferred to let him starve. I pointed out what I said before they came, and she started saying that this was negligence with an elderly person who is capable of doing everything. They left before I got home and stayed at a random person's house. My brothers are complaining, accusing me of being petty and vindictive, just like my parents. I don't think I'm wrong, but I would like outside perspective. Am I the jerk? My father is 63 and my mother is 60. Not the jerk. Your father is a grown man. He could make something himself, but he chose to get into a power struggle with you in your own home while they're staying with you. Good for you for standing up for yourself. Yeah, and if your brothers won't back off, I would tell them they're either perfectly capable of moving back home, moving in with your parents, or moving your parents out to them to take care of them properly, or they're capable of shutting up and letting you deal with your dad's petty tantrums as you see it. I think your dad may be famous. I think I saw his picture under the definition of weaponized incompetence. Not the jerk. Sorry about your family dynamics. You were clear when they asked to stay with you. If they chose to ignore it, that's on them. Not the jerk. Starving with a fridge full of food? Really? Wow. You could have at least made him snacks? Are you kidding me? What is he, a 5-year-old? Sounds like your father is being a petulant child and trying to make some absolutely ridiculous point about superiority by refusing to help himself. Good for you for standing up to them and calling out their BS. Just wow. Am I the jerk for telling a social group member that the free social activities were not free for me? I'm the organizer of a social meetup group. We have lots of activities to do on a regular basis that we all enjoy. Usually it's going out to eat, but also fun things like movies, bowling, farmers market, potlucks at various members' houses if they're able to host, grilling at the park. I have one member who asked me if I could please schedule activities for the group that are free because she's poor and can't afford activities that cost money. Fine, we can come up with some free or at least very low-cost activities to do, but I also have to consider the rest of the group and what they want. I don't mind the first several times she reminded me to remember to schedule free activities for those of us on a budget, but then I started to get mad. Especially after I organized 3 activities that were free: the visit to the farmer's market, the visit to the nature center, and a bike ride around the college campus, specifically so that she could participate, and she didn't even show up. She said that the farmer's market was not free. It sure can be if you don't buy anything. I didn't buy anything. I walked around and looked at stuff. And the bike ride was because we also planned to go out for pizza afterwards. She could have come bike riding with us and then skipped out on the pizza if she didn't want to spend money. Nobody else would have shown up if we were just going to ride bikes and not going somewhere to refresh afterwards. Did she expect us to sit around in the heat and look at each other? She wanted me to schedule potlucks, which are fine if people are willing to host, but potlucks are not free. She was getting on my nerves with her constant reminders to remember to reschedule free things because she's poor and can't participate unless it's free. So one day, while she was telling me for the 50 millionth time, I told her that this activity we were doing cost me about $100. It was a picnic in the park we were having. I brought the ice chest and portable grill so we could have this fun activity, which was fun, but it was not free. So apparently her feelings were hurt because I told her what this activity cost me to set up. And I didn't mind buying the portable grill and ice chest. I chose to do that. She thought it was inappropriate for me to tell her what I spent for supplies so that she could enjoy her free, but not for me, activity. So, am I the jerk? First for scheduling activities that could have been free for her, but she didn't show up because it wasn't completely free, and for telling her what this so-called free activity had actually cost me to set up. Not the jerk. Make her an organizer and let her run the free activities, seeing as she doesn't seem to think yours are free enough for her. OP. I always reiterated that any member can set up and organize an event if they want to. Like hiking, for example. Some people wanted to go hiking, but I'm not a hiker, and I had no clue where the good hikes were. But people who are into hiking were free to suggest a place and then set up a day and time. No one ever did. If you want a hike organized, I'm not your person for that. I would just stick to that as your mantra from now on. We always like to have a variety of events. I'm happy that you want to set up some free ones. I can't wait to see what you plan. And be super friendly and cheerful about it. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Let me translate her request for you. I want a handout, someone to pay for me to have an enjoyable outing. Just block her out of the group and move on. People like that are toxic. Everyone sucks here. She's wrong for not showing up for the things that are in her budget. You're wrong for reminding her that she's a charity case that others are sacrificing money for. Nobody who's poor wants it bitterly thrown in their face that people resent doing things decent for them. Also, the have-nots waving bye to the haves halfway through an outing when they depart for more costly pleasures is pretty awkward and depressing. I'd have probably skipped that bike ride too. You're the jerk. You didn't schedule a single thing that's free. You always had a caveat to buying something. She's not asking for charity. She's asking for actual free activities. All the not the jerks sound unempathetic. OP. Then feel free to start your own social group where you schedule nothing but absolutely free activities that cost no one anything. Which, like I keep saying, would amount to sitting in a public park with no food or drink except water and looking at each other. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the other group member? Please let us know.
Sometimes I think socializing is a lot more trouble than it's worth. Know what I mean, Reddit boy?
Why don't you ask someone who works here? The time I was a jerk. This is an old story from about 20 or so years ago. I stopped at Costco on the way home from work. I just came in looking for some electronics or whatnot, and so wasn't pushing a cart. And while in the electronics section, this older woman sees me looking over some item, and I can see she's interested in an item shelved near the one I'm looking at. I don't even remember what the items were. Anyway, she turns and asks me some very specific questions about the item she's looking at. I looked up at her and simply answered, "Sorry, I have no idea." A few minutes later, at the other end of the same aisle, this same lady comes up to me with some other item in her hands and asks me, "Do you know blah 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 about this?" Again, it was an item that I had no idea about. And at this point, I'm mildly annoyed and just answered, "Nope," and turned to go browse the next aisle over. It's worthwhile, I think, at this point in the story to explain that I was working in northern New Jersey, basically a suburb of New York City, in a fairly stressful job, and one of the reasons I had even stopped at Costco was that my 12-mile ride home was mired in terrible traffic. Rather than spend the next 30 minutes trying to go the last 6 miles home, I pulled into the Costco I was about to crawl past, figuring I'd do a little shopping and let some of the traffic clear out while I did so. So I started this whole experience wound a little tightly. On top of that, this was when I was in my early 30s or late 20s. I was a pretty big jerk back then. I have mellowed since, and partly due to this experience. Anyway, moving on. 5 minutes later, I'm nerding out over whatever thing I was looking at in the next aisle, and the woman comes around the corner from the other aisle where I'd left her, specifically walking past other customers to come to ask me a third question about something that I had no idea about. By now, I'm pretty annoyed. It's clear to me that she's not flirting with me or anything like that, and I cannot understand why she keeps coming to bug me about these things when all I want to do is just waste a few minutes out of traffic. In all honesty, if I'd had any answers for her, I would likely have given them to her, but I didn't have those answers. In reply to her question, I gave her a crappy look, and in a very condescending voice I said, "I have no idea, but maybe you ought to ask someone who works here," and made an overly dramatic gesture with my hands pointing towards one of the employees rounding the corner at the edge of the electronics section about 20 feet away. The woman looked at me, somewhat offended, and didn't say another word. I didn't give a darn. Why couldn't this lady leave me to my nerding out? I left the electronics section and wandered off, and after another 20 or so minutes of walking around and just avoiding traffic, picked up some grocery item or other and walked to the cashier line to pay for it. As my turn came up to pay, I pulled out my wallet looking for my membership card and could not find it. I knew I had to show it to get into the store and quickly checked all my pant pockets. No card. The cashier smiles at me and points to my chest. I looked where she was pointing, and in a split second I realized, maybe not for the first time ever, that I was a giant jerk. So my employer had access control on all buildings, and you scanned your employee ID at the door of any of these buildings to enter. Employees were also obliged to display their IDs at all times while on work property. Many people wore the badge attached to one of those retractable cards that you clip to your belt. Some wore their badge on a loop of ribbon around their neck, and others, like myself, wore their badge in a transparent pouch that was designed to clip onto a shirt or jacket pocket. My employer also required business attire, so on my way home from work, I was dressed in leather-soled shoes, pleated dress pants, a white button-down shirt, and a tie. Left the jacket in the car for the trip to Costco. Apparently, I also left my work ID badge holder still clipped to my shirt pocket. At that point in time, it would not have been unusual for me to go in and out of buildings at work a dozen or more times on any given day. After a year or so, it had become a well-practiced and unthinking motion for me to grab my work ID from the badge holder that held it on my shirt pocket, flash it to the door sensor, and just slip it back into the pocket on the holder as I entered a building. Apparently, when I pulled my Costco ID out of my wallet to get into the store, I unthinkingly placed it in the badge holder, since I'd forgotten to take that off and leave it in my car with my jacket, instead of back into my wallet. I had been walking around the store looking like a manager, with a badge displaying the Costco logo prominently in bright red letters, right on my chest. As all of this realization came to me in the second or two after the cashier pointed out my Costco ID card I was wearing, my face went a little pale and she asked me if I was okay. I mumbled something about feeling dumb and this being a habit from work as I paid for my stuff. I hurried out of the store, hoping I didn't see the woman who had been asking me questions. It began to dawn on me that if I weren't such a jerk coward, I'd go and find that woman, explain to her what happened, and apologize for being so rude. Instead, I just left the store in shame, feeling about 2 inches tall. My Karen stepdaughter demands I pay for a useless college degree that won't even get her a job in the field that she wants to work in. My wife and I have been married for a decade. She's a stay-at-home wife, and we have no kids of our own. She has a daughter from a previous relationship, Sarah, and we've gotten along for the most part. Sarah is a junior in college and pursuing a biology degree with additional courses required by medical schools. She's had dreams of being a doctor and helping people since her mom and I met. The problem is, she's not a very good student. She's failed her Biology 1 class and had to retake it to get a B. She really struggled in her next level biology class and finished with a C. She also got a C in her chemistry class. She got a B in Calculus 1 and 2. She's making A's in her non-science and non-math classes so they're padding her GPA, which is at a 3.2. This semester, I just learned that she will make B's and C's in her science and math classes. I'm not a doctor and I don't know any doctors, but I did online research. I found out that medical schools require many things, but at the top of the list, they require a high GPA and top grades in science and math classes. With Sarah's grades, she's not getting into any medical school. I even looked into nursing school to see if I can talk her into maybe going that route, and all the ones I looked at require higher grades than what she currently has. I talked with my wife about it, and she said medical school looks at other things besides grades, and that's where Sarah excels. She has a solid volunteer resume, and she cares about people. I argued none of that matters if her grades are not good enough. She argues that Sarah will do great in interviews. Like I said, I have no experience with medical school, so I can't argue with her logic. Instead, I talked with Sarah when she came home for Thanksgiving, and I told her to look into another major because she might not be cut out to be a doctor. She ran to her mom, and we all got into a huge argument. I admit I lost my temper, and I yelled that I'm not wasting any more money on something she'll fail at. I told them both I'm not paying for next semester's classes until she changes her major to something more realistic. I feel bad, I really do, but I'm not rich, and I don't have money to waste if she doesn't have a chance to get into a medical school. Am I the jerk? Additional info. The reason why I want her to switch majors is that having a biology degree without any advanced degree is useless from my research. While I don't know any doctors, I have friends who have biology degrees without other advanced degrees, and they couldn't do anything with it. One had to go back to school for another degree, one works as an assistant manager at Lowe's, another has been a receptionist for 20 years. They all advised against getting just a biology degree. While these are all noble jobs, they didn't need to pay for a biology degree just to get these jobs. I'm still willing to pay for her degree if she switches to something that will allow her to get a good job. You're the jerk. You can pay for her undergrad even if you think she can't get into med school. The biology degree will still help her to get a job, whether it's as a doctor or not. I'd pay the 4 years if that's what you originally agreed to. I've heard stories of non-traditional routes to becoming a doctor. If she really wants to, she can make it happen. I had a friend go to community college, then finish her 4-year degree at a state school, go get a master's in medical science, and then still couldn't get into US med schools. So she did the Caribbean medical school route. It's a harder path, but at the end of it, she's still going to be a doctor when she passes the boards and completes her residency. She can also do grad school in a different area or move into lab work in the area of biology. It would be a jerk move to cut her off suddenly. You're the jerk. Let her graduate in biology. If her MCAT scores suck, she won't get into med school and she can do graduate work in another area, like public health. That's still medicine adjacent. She can also get a master's in education and teach high school biology. She can also work in a medical lab running samples. It sounds like with her grades, she won't get into med school, but she should still finish her undergraduate degree. Well, what would you do? Would you still pay for your stepdaughter's degree or not? Please let us know. Husband is trying to do our Thanksgiving meal himself this year and refuses my help. I cook Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners every year for my husband, his family, and our kid, and have for 16 years. I put a lot of love, planning, and effort into making it a really special day. This year, however, between work, parenting, and everything else, I'm tired and I don't want to cook Thanksgiving. I went to him and asked if we could just go to a nice restaurant instead. To my surprise, he said he'd handle it. However, even cooking a simple Thanksgiving meal requires forethought, like getting the frozen turkey in the fridge to defrost multiple days in advance. Now is the time to pick up some items. I don't know if he knows what he signed up for. I started asking when he was planning on doing his grocery run and what dishes he was planning to serve. He just dodged the question and said he'd handle it. He has a habit of underestimating tasks and rushing last minute. I finally was like, look, why don't we work together and start planning? He admitted he was only going to cook a simple meal of turkey breast, mashed potatoes, and broccoli. That's it. Basically, I said that's not actually a special holiday dinner, and I wouldn't have agreed to that had I known what he meant. I said I'd be happy to work together and balance simple things like he wants to, and special like I want. I suggested turkey, potatoes, packet gravy, box stuffing, pre-made mac and cheese, canned cranberry sauce, broccoli, rolls, and a store-made pie. He got really defensive and made it about him versus me, very black and white. Your way or my way. His offer isn't good enough to me. I'm just trying to get my way. When I explained no, that's not what I meant, he insisted that I did. I can't imagine family showing up and being served a very simple meal like that. It's just bad holiday hosting. Maybe coordinating a potluck would be okay, but he wasn't doing that. We already committed to hosting them. Am I the jerk? Oh no, OP, his family is definitely expecting more and will also probably blame you when they have to adjust their expectations so drastically without warning. Not the jerk. Let him fail. Tell everyone the minute they arrive that hubby did everything. You're not even sure what's on the menu, but you're sure it will be fabulous, and all credit should go to him. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You didn't want to do it because it's so much work, because it's a special day with special food. You suggested visiting a nice restaurant instead because it's a special day, etc. It's nice that he offered to handle it this year, but he is not really handling it. I cost Bank of America $8,000 legally. A bit of context. I've been in the mortgage and related businesses for over 30 years. I know it very well. I've never liked Bank of America, especially their servicing division. This story happened a few years ago. Just found out about this group. I refinanced my mortgage through a mortgage broker and, to my aggravation, they sold the servicing rights to Bank of America. The entity that owns your loan is usually different than the one that you pay to service the loan. I was upset. I estimated that Bank of America paid about $5,000 to service my loan, as most folks at the time expect loans to stay on the books for at least 3 years. About 2 months after the servicing switched, Bank of America announced they'd be charging a $5 fee for the convenience to pay the mortgage online. Truly an unwarranted money grab. I'm blessed that I can put a little extra towards my mortgage payment every month. So the following month, I took out my mortgage payment plus $400 in quarters from my local bank. I then went to my local Bank of America branch and handed them my mortgage payment in quarters and repayment stub. I asked for a receipt of payment. I overpaid my mortgage to reduce the current balance and thereby reducing Bank of America's fees. The nice branch manager said, "You can write a check, you don't have to pay in coins." I said I could, but I would charge a $9.50 convenient fee for the stamp, my check, and the ink used. The branch manager actually laughed and said okay. They counted the money and I got my receipt. Next month, the charge was still there, so I went to another local Bank of America branch, which had gotten bad reviews on Yelp due to the hostile bank manager. I did the same thing. The branch manager said, "Write a check. We don't accept quarters." I said, "Shall I call the local state's banking commissioner, the Consumer Financial Protection Board, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, U.S. top bank regulator, and say you won't accept legal tender?" I asked to talk to the district manager. I was making a stink. About 20 minutes later, he begrudgingly had the staff count the quarters and I got a receipt. I told the manager that I would be bringing dimes next time. The next month, I brought dimes. He accepted them, but glared at me the whole time. After that payment, Bank of America rescinded their convenience fee. The month after that, I refinanced my mortgage at a lower rate. Bank of America only got roughly 6 months of fees for servicing, and they expected to last 3 years at minimum, 5 years to be profitable. One of my proudest malicious compliance moments. They must be my leaves on my curb? As you wish. The leaf collection company from my neighborhood has absurdly strict rules about where leaves must be for pickup. I live at the end of a cul-de-sac, so my curb is curved and pretty short, about 30 feet, 9 meters long. My property is wedge-shaped, so my backyard is quite long, 200 feet, 60 meters, and has 40 to 50 oak trees. I also have 2 sugar maples in my front yard, so leaves, lots of leaves. Pickup rules state leaves must be within 5 feet of the curb, but not on the road. They must also be at least 15 feet from a mailbox. Because subscriptions for leaf pickup are by individual homeowner, neighbors are not allowed to combine leaves and cannot buy a group subscription. Subscribers must only put their leaves from the current year out for pickup. Pickup trucks use GPS to identify homes who have signed up and ignore leaves in front of homes that did not sign up. Because I have so many leaves and so little curb, only 15 feet of available curb due to the required distance from a mailbox, I called the leaf collection company and asked to put the leaves along a longer curb I share with my neighbor. "No problem," they said. Great. The truck came through and picked up a fraction of the pile and left the rest of the pile the driver decided was in front of my neighbor's property. I called the company back and a different person said those are the rules. I'll just have to figure it out. Fine. Now it's on. I have 15 feet of width and 5 feet of depth. There is, however, no limit on height. I moved the remaining leaves to my available curb space. I collected the rest of my leaves and added them to the pile. I spoke with my neighbors and acquired the rights to their leaves by paying them $1 each. Now they are all my leaves. I shoveled and swept the leaves off the streets. They went on the pile. I collected the repurchased leaves from the neighbors. They went on the pile. Leaves continued to fall, so I kept adding them. It was a lot of work, but the pile was over 12 feet tall. I spent a ton of time using a snow shovel to fling the leaves to the top of the pile that was more than 5 feet above my head. Neighborhood residents stopped to gape at the epic leaf mound. I'm happy to battle willful ignorance with malicious compliance. I reminded myself of this every time I spent another hour tending to the obscenity at my curb. The truck came today. The pile dwarfed the truck. They had to drive away and dump leaves, then come back and reload twice. Angry director gets her comeuppance in 4 gradual actions. Several years ago, I used to work at an agency that hired us out as short-term temporary workers or contractors. These jobs pretty much consisted of stuff that company employees couldn't be bothered to do, and so got someone in to sort it out. It wasn't great, but I had to make ends meet. Anyway, one of these jobs was for 150 hours at 5 weeks of office administration. There wasn't much more information to go on, but a job is a job. The office turned out to be a quite small, stuffy little building at the back of an industrial estate. I was told to report to Beryl. When I turned up, I was met by a rather grumpy-looking old lady having a cigarette by the front door. This was Beryl. Beryl didn't even say hello to me or even ask my name, but showed me in, pointed at an enormous pile of boxes full of paperwork, saying,
This all needs to be scanned in. There are 2 scanners connected to a computer there. Off you go. Let someone know if you need help.
So off I went. That pile of boxes was to be my job for the next month and a bit. Joy. The office was predominantly young men, with Beryl being the only other woman. She was in her 50s and spent more time smoking than working, and without being rude, clearly didn't look after herself. It was quite flattering to have a bunch of these guys pop by my workstation for a chat occasionally. After a few days of scanning, Beryl visited my cubicle. She wasn't happy that I spent too much time talking and not enough time working. I was confused. While I didn't have any metrics or targets, I was pretty consistently working through this mountain of paperwork. I got the impression that Beryl didn't like the attention I was getting. I pointed out to her that I haven't left my desk apart from to go to the bathroom. If someone's over here to talk to me, then that's fine, as I can talk and scan at the same time, like I'm doing right now. She wasn't happy and turned away, calling out,
Just do your job,
as she left. Some of the other guys had heard this, and they popped by my desk later and said not to worry. They'd had agency staff before, and Beryl always hated if a young woman arrived because she was grumpy and jealous. Not my words. In fact, a few years ago, one young woman had left the office in tears because Beryl had torn her a new one for going off to lunch with some of the other guys. Naturally, this annoyed me, particularly because Beryl thought she could bully and disrespect agency staff, and I certainly wasn't going to leave the job because of an angry jerk. Malicious compliance number 1. For the rest of my time there, I made sure to get dressed up. Makeup, curls, a mini office dress, stiletto heels. When Beryl saw me clicking my way down the office the next day, fully dressed up just to scan some paperwork, she scowled at me but didn't say anything. The next week, Beryl took some time out of her busy smoking schedule to visit me in my cubicle. The second time she had done so since I'd started. Some of the paperwork I was scanning had been stapled together, so I'd asked someone in the office for a staple remover and a stapler. I used to pull out the staple, scan the document, rename it on the computer, then restaple it and put it back in the box. I was just pulling a staple out when Beryl walked by. Beryl's first words to me were,
What are you doing?
I replied that this document was stapled, and if I put it in the machine, it would jam. She raised her voice slightly and said,
Nobody told you to do that. Just scan each page separately. Leave the papers alone.
I could almost hear her eye roll as she walked away. Malicious compliance number 2. So I did. I scanned everything with staples just folded over, and then created folders called Document 123, and each scan went in as 123 page 1.pdf, 123 page 2.pdf. You get the idea. This slowed me down a lot, but hey, it's what I was asked to do. At some point, Beryl walked by and saw me flipping pages like that. I'd put my hair in a bun and taken my heels off, and she smirked. She thought she had flustered me and that I didn't see her reaction. Don't worry, Beryl, you didn't, and I did. The paperwork I was scanning in was boxed up as the newest first, so as I got to some of the older papers, these had been moved around a couple of times and were slightly scruffed up or folded or similar. A jammed scanner wasn't an issue. It had happened a couple of times, but as I got to the older papers, the jams became more frequent. It was easy to sort through. Just open the back door of the scanner, roll the paper out, cancel the job, and redo it. At this point, I'd gone back to unstapling and restapling because Beryl had given me some space, thinking she had broken me, and I just wanted to get the job done so I could leave. Beryl walked in one day. This would have been my 4th week there. She saw me unjamming the scanner and flipped her top. She yelled,
"What are you doing?"
At this point, all heads in the office turned to where we were. I calmly told her, "The scanner has jammed. I'm just pulling the paper out so I can rescan it. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes." She continued yelling,
"At no point were you instructed to perform the repairs. We have someone for that. Stop what you are doing and get someone to help you. I asked you this when you started. Why can't you follow simple instructions?"
It took a lot of patience not to argue back with her, which I thought was what she wanted, but I said, "Okay, fine. Can I speak to the IT guy to sort this out?" I couldn't have choreographed her response better. I then knew that she did want me to argue so that she could kick me out because she hesitated and said,
Well, the IT guy is off for the rest of the week."
This was a Thursday.
"Ahem. Use the other scanner. If you jam it, let me know."
And stormed off. Malicious compliance number 3. I knew her diary, and she was off the next day, Friday. I carried on with one scanner, making sure it didn't jam that day, and waited until the next morning. Coincidentally, the scanner jammed on the first piece of paper I fed into it. Who'd have thought? Obviously, I rang Beryl. She didn't answer her phone, and she wasn't in the office. I spent the day sitting around without much to do. Whilst talking to the guys in the office, I learned that the company had been bought by a much larger IT firm, and they just wanted the rights to the proprietary software that they had developed. It also turned out that the CEO of the small company basically paid himself into retirement and appointed Beryl as the director. Beryl knew that her days were numbered, so she was even more bitter to the staff. The guys working there had been committed various levels of careers within the new IT firm, which they were happy with. As I was told, 120,000 employees, 30 dev roles are easy to find. One director role is not. Anyway, when we returned on Monday, you could almost see the vein in her neck throbbing. She'd wasted an entire day of whatever her company paid my agency because little old me wasn't trusted to fix a paper jam. I used to get in a little later than the rest of the staff, agency perks. But when I got in, she'd had the IT champion perform the skilled job of opening a scanner and pulling a piece of paper out. She didn't even look at me when she said,
"Scanners are fixed. Get on with your job and don't mess around."
At this point, you might be thinking, this is a lot of text for some pretty trivial malicious compliance. Well, you'll like the final part. My last week there coincided with a new contract that the company had been given by their new owners. I assume it was some sort of litmus test. Whilst I don't pretend to understand what it was, the job involved a lot of scanning documents that had been handwritten. Hooray, more boxes. At the same time, a few of the guys who worked in there were going on a visit to the new parent company, which were based in the USA. I live in the UK. The IT champion was one of these guys who went. When the boxes were delivered to my cubicle, Beryl popped by and said,
"These take priority. All of what I said to you is more important than ever. Do not mess around, otherwise you're out of the door. Am I clear?"
"Yes, ma'am." The paperwork delivered was from the USA. Our paper sizes are different. The first piece of paper I fed into the scanner jammed it, a safety lock, because it expected A4 and got US letter instead. I jammed both scanners. Beryl, not being one to turn down a free trip to America, had gone with them. I rang her at 11 a.m. UK time, which was 5 a.m. their time. She picked up and was not impressed. I felt sorry for the folks adjacent to her hotel room when she screamed down the phone,
"You've done what? How? Why?"
I tell her about the USA paperwork.
"Can you not fix it?"
Final malicious compliance. "No, you've told me many times that I can't fix these machines. What's the business continuity plan?" Side note, my brother told me that phrase and he still doesn't understand why I turned up to his house a bit later with a few pizzas and a box of beer. Beryl had no idea what to do. She was clearly flustered.
"Can you just do what you can? We need this done."
"What would you want me to do?"
"Can you fix the scanners? Because this is really important."
"I'm sorry, you told me I can't do that. I need simple instructions to work with."
"Just fix it."
"I'd be happy to show an IT specialist where the scanners are, if you can get them here to hang up tone." Well, that's that then. I spent the rest of the week chatting with my colleagues, updating my CV, and applying for jobs. Nobody turned up to fix the scanners. When my final week finished, I said bye to the guys I'd worked with, wished them luck, and left with none of the critical paperwork scanned in. When Beryl got back from her business trip, I learned that she had spent one day at the parent company and left it to the other guys. When crap hit the fan because nothing was being delivered, they wondered where she was. This was day 2 into the 5-day business trip. She was at a spa, phone switched off. She flew out early on day 5 without seeing any of her colleagues of the parent company. I kept in touch with a few of the guys afterwards. After this, the dev guys were transferred contracts to the larger IT firm. They all got a very small salary increase, but they were able to work from home. This was before lockdown, so it was a bit of a rarity back then. Beryl, meanwhile, didn't fare so well. She was initially offered redundancy, paid, including pension deals, but when someone complained that she had not been present for the meetings, which I think was their IT champion, they found out she had been sightseeing, shopping, tanning, and getting her hair done on company time. She ended up being fired. No bonus, no pension, nothing. I quit the agency not long after, and after 1 or 2 moves, ended up in a job I'm very happy with. The agency were none of the wiser about any of this. They just wanted their money, and aside from one initial checkup call, left me to it. Am I the jerk for eating alone in a different room at my boyfriend's parents' house? For many years, my boyfriend's parents have had us over for brunch, lunch, or dinner. They have a nice deck with an outdoor table and chairs and use it to eat or hang out. Thing is, it has to be freezing temperatures before they'll concede and eat in the dining room. I've had to sit on that deck many times trying to eat my food while I'm shivering, even though I'm wearing layers. Last week, we were over there for brunch mid-morning. The outdoor table was set with plates, etc. I had my layers on again, but I was cold. When we were outside, I noticed the thermometer read about 45 degrees Fahrenheit. The food got cold quickly, and I decided I'd had enough. I told them as nicely as I could that I was too cold. The mom turned to the dad and asked, "Well, should we pack it in?" The dad, scooping food into his mouth, said, "Nah, it's not too bad out here," and kept on eating. Nothing more was said, not even from my boyfriend. Everyone just kept eating. So I apologized sincerely that I needed to eat inside, gathered my plate, napkin, silverware, and glass, and went into the dining room. I finished eating before they were done, and since I was warmed up, I went back to the deck while they finished up. I could feel tension and no one even talked to me. After we left, my boyfriend went off on me in the car for being rude. I agree it's not the best thing to do, but I had put up with this for a long time out of politeness, and I think their behavior is nutty. Sure, after years of this, I should know better than to go over there with my boyfriend if it's a cold day. I do it to be a good girlfriend and a good daughter-in-law. Not the jerk. They were rude. You're a guest. They should have went inside. What's wrong with them? 45 degrees Fahrenheit is cold. Maybe they should invest in a patio heater. OP. Great idea. Christmas gift from Junior and me. You do realize that getting them that heater would only be an excuse for them to stay out in the cold weather even longer, right? OP. Good point. But if it works well enough to keep me warm, we can all be happy. Might need to get 2. Oh, but it's not cold enough to start it. Only 45 degrees. That thing costs money to run, you know. I would simply just not go to their house when it's too cold to sit outside. 45 degrees Fahrenheit is 7 degrees Celsius. No, just no. OP. That reminds me, the dad keeps the hot water heater off and turns it on when he wants to take a shower. He thinks having hot water sitting around will result in wasted energy lost when it's not used. I mean, yeah, there is some loss, but not much. Even my boyfriend thinks that's extreme. The mom hates this. Husband expects me to handle our Christmas this year with just $100. So I'm a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids. My husband works full-time and he gets an okay salary, but he's tightened the grip on spending for the past 4 months to be able to save up to go watch the football event overseas. He's literally obsessed with anything to do with football. He said he rarely ever gets to do what he wants to, and so I didn't want to judge him since it's his money eventually. We discussed plans for Christmas, and he told me to handle everything since he won't be back until December 20th. He told me he had put aside money for Christmas decorations, food, gifts, kids' needs, etc. The money in total was $100. I was completely shocked, and I told him $100 for an entire family's Christmas celebration was ridiculously not enough. He shrugged, saying it's all he's got, but I pointed out how he's paying for his friends' and his girlfriend's travel expenses. He told me to just take it, But I said that if he decides to leave me with just $100, then I won't be doing anything for Christmas. We had lots of arguments and couldn't get this resolved. He's in Qatar now. He left days ago. Yesterday, while I was cleaning, I found an envelope with the same $100 and a note from him telling me to make it work. I sent him a message that I've decided I won't be doing anything for Christmas with this little money, period. He was livid. He just kept sending an angry message after another, calling me spoiled and telling me to stop expecting to live like I was still living in my parents' house and to stop trying to rob the kids of enjoying the holidays like the other kids. I haven't replied, but he's livid, saying I'm punishing him for going and trying to guilt him using his own money. Not the jerk. Why is it his money when you're in charge of the household admin and childcare while he waltzes off with his friends to pay thousands to watch a bunch of overpaid guys kick a ball around a stadium built on eco-destruction and human rights violations? No sane person from this century could pull off Christmas with $100 unless they go in for petty theft on a grand scale. Ultimatum time. He treats you as an equal financially, or you leave and get child support. Not just that. He would rather pay for his buddy and his girlfriend to travel than provide his kids with a decent holiday. OP, you're not the jerk, and if you have any other family to spend the holidays with, please do that instead. So he has 1. Tightened the family budget for an event that only benefits him. 2. Paid for his friend and his friend's girlfriend even though point 1 exists. 3. Expects you to plan, cater, and buy Christmas decorations, etc. with $100 and just deal with it. 4. Is gaslighting you and blaming you for his selfish actions and choices. 5. It's not his money, it's his family's money. I'm sure if you worked and pulled a stunt like this, he would be more than upset. 6. Use the $100 to get a locksmith. He doesn't value you and your contributions to the family, nor your 3 kids. The World Cup isn't any more important than your family. It's literally televised. There's no real reason to go. Not the jerk. To be honest, if someone showed me and our kids this much disrespect, the only thing they'd be getting is separation and divorce papers. Am I the jerk for walking out of a restaurant twice after my wife made me the third wheel again? I, 30 male, my wife, 29 female, planned a date night tonight as our kids were at my in-laws. We hadn't decided where to go, and while driving, my wife asked me where to go. I told her that I don't care, as long as it's somewhere that her coworkers don't work, because my wife works in the restaurant industry and knows a lot of people that work at the places near us. This turns into the majority of our dates being her talking with them instead of me. So I tell my wife, as long as I'm not made into a third wheel again this time, I'll be happy. She picks a Tex-Mex place and says, I don't know anyone that works there. As soon as we walk into the restaurant, someone shouts my wife's name and a woman comes over to us and tells us she'll take us. Turns out this woman is an ex-coworker. We sit at our table, and my wife and her are already talking and gossiping about the things going on at their previous jobs. I wasn't mad at this point because I know that they want to catch up. After several minutes of this, she left to go get our drinks, and my wife apologizes and says that she had no idea that she worked there. A few minutes later, she comes back with our drinks and her boyfriend, who is also an ex-coworker of my wife's, and they proceed to talk and ignore me again. Then after taking our food orders, she stays at the table and they talk for another 5 to 7 minutes instead of putting our order in. I try to join in and I'm ignored again. When she goes to put the order in, I tell my wife, I asked for you not to do this one thing tonight. She proceeds to tell me that she didn't want to be rude and it's just small talk. I tell her that I tried to join in and they ignored me. She tells me that they didn't ignore me, they just didn't hear me. I was speaking as loud as they were. She then asks me, what do you want me to do? Tell her to buzz off? I said, no. Politely tell her that you are on a date with your husband and we'd like to spend some time together. She tells me that this is rude and it's basically the same as telling her to buzz off. She tells me to stop being in a bad mood because we're alone now and that I'm the only one ruining the night. I said, fine then, I'll remove myself, and got up and walked out of the restaurant. I stood outside several minutes until she called and begged me to come inside. There were a few issues with my meal, which turned into another argument, with her saying nothing can be right because I'm in a bad mood because she spoke to someone. I told her that I refuse to let her make me the jerk in this situation. She says that I'm being controlling and this is what normal people do and that I'm being psychotic. I ask her for the keys so I can go out to the car and cool off. She tells me no. So I tell her I'm going to walk home and get up to leave. She calls me 20 minutes later, asks where I am, and comes to pick me up. This turned into another giant fight, and her saying she's going to stay the night at her parents', and that this is why her friends think I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I forgot to mention that our server's boyfriend, that also works at the restaurant and knows my wife, also approached the table and spoke to my wife. However, that was a 2-minute conversation. Then he left and didn't bother us again. Not the jerk. You made it clear that this was a sore spot, and your wife chose to be rude to you rather than risk coming across as rude to her friends. She easily could have said, "It's so great to see you guys, but this is a rare night without the kids for us, so let's catch up later." That would have been considerate of everyone. She prioritized her friends over you. You're the jerk. You got so upset that your wife was chatting to a friend that you stormed outside to pout like a child. After you went back in, you had problems with your food and then got so upset you wanted to leave and walk home? This is pretty childish behavior. It seems your wife legitimately didn't know that her former colleagues worked here, and you never explained to the colleague that you were on a date night and would appreciate some privacy. And you needed to be the one to say that, because it is your wife's industry. If your wife said it and it was taken rudely, it could affect her reputation. If you said it, worst case, they might think your wife is married to a jerk, but at least it wouldn't affect her. But in general, going outside to pout because your wife is talking to someone else and you feel ignored just seems like something a child would do, not a grown man. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
I would have been like, "Excuse me, we're on a date night. Can you, stop bothering us?"
My Karen daughter demands I buy her boyfriend a new Tesla. I, 45 male, have a son, Logan, who's 21, and a daughter, Emily, who's 22. My ex consistently fought for custody, and she won. Logan and I were very close, but Emily wanted nothing to do with me. I did purchase Logan and Emily their first car when they turned 18. Logan still drives the car today. Emily ended up selling the car after a year and used the money for college. My ex passed last year, and Logan moved in with me. Emily moved in with her current boyfriend and has been firm on not wanting me in her life. Her boyfriend got into an accident recently, and Emily reached out to me asking if I could help her with purchasing a car. I did some research and sent her some cars that were for sale and decently priced. She reached back out saying that she wanted a brand new Tesla. I looked at the Tesla pricing and the model was over the amount that I wanted to spend. I told her that I could not help her with purchasing the Tesla, and she got angry, saying that her boyfriend wanted the car and she didn't have the money. I again told her that I would be willing to help her purchase another car that was in the budget. She went back to not contacting me. Am I the jerk for not buying my daughter's boyfriend a car? This is really your question? You owe neither her nor her boyfriend, especially not her boyfriend, a car. You did it once, and she made her perfectly reasonable, honestly choice. You don't exist just to be her Miss Moneypenny, not the jerk. Emily moved in with her current boyfriend and has been firm on not wanting you in her life. Emily reached out to you asking if you could help her with purchasing a car, not the jerk. Tell Emily she can buy her own car. She only called you when she needed something. She's selfish and doesn't even care about you. Not the jerk. It really sucks that she only wanted to have contact with you in order to try and get something from you. It's extremely generous of you to even offer to help her boyfriend out like that. Sister-in-law and niece destroyed my plants, so I banned them from my house. Years ago, I really got into houseplants and started to collect them. Over the years, I've had up to 70, but whittled my collection down to about 35, just the ones I really love. My niece, Jenny, who's 14, has developed an interest in plants and will come over and we will talk about them, and she helps with propagation and repotting. I had to go out of town for 2 weeks to take care of some work stuff, so I asked sister-in-law and Jenny if they could plant sit for me. I told Jenny I would pay, but also give her a few cuttings as a trade-off. They agreed, and when they came over, I gave a tour and explained the care needed, and also showed off a few prized plants. Sister-in-law asked how much a few of them ran me, and I did share. This didn't seem weird because the family knows, and I've gotten some plants as gifts. Well, I returned from my trip and was horrified. They watered and gave the right amount of light, but they also decided to give a lot of my plants haircuts, big ones. My prized Cebu blue mother plant was destroyed. The climbing one too. My Mandula had been done the same. My golden that I trained up the stairwell, my string of pearls, hearts, and ruby necklace all destroyed. my silver stripe. The worst was that my pink princess phyllo had been reduced to 2 leaves, and my albo is down to 3. I don't even think they got nodes necessarily. These plants are expensive and prized. I basically broke down, and when they came to meet me to give me back my key, I screamed and screamed at them. Jenny started crying, saying I said I would give her cuttings, so she thought it was okay. I screamed at her to go home and get me what she stole from me and bring it back now, because she knew I didn't mean she could destroy my plants. Sister-in-law got between us and said,
"What's done is done."
I said, "No way, you're returning everything." Jenny said, "Mom already sold most of them on Marketplace." I lost it and just screamed and screamed at them until Jenny was crying and her mom got in my face and told me I was having a tantrum over plants. I told her to get out of my house and don't ever come anywhere near me or my home again. I called my brother, sister-in-law's husband, and he was shocked and said that they told him I said it was all okay. He brought me the stuff she hadn't sold yet and apologized. I told him I never ever want either of them in the same room as me again. They're horrible, awful, irredeemable people, and I hope they both get karma for what they've done. He told me he gets that I'm upset, but I'm taking it too far, and that family means not holding grudges. I told him to leave, and I cried for the rest of the day. I'm posting because I need to know if my edict is over the top and if I'm overreacting. So, am I the jerk for telling them that they are no longer welcome in my home and not even wanting them in the same room? Not the jerk. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Your sister-in-law knew exactly what she was doing and making a profit of it. I'm surprised your brother didn't realize something was amiss. OP. He said that he noticed they were carrying a lot back home after coming over, but my niece said Auntie said it was okay, over and over. I would demand 100% of their profits too, not just what they haven't sold. Tell your brother that it is the only way you'd even think about healing the relationship with your niece in the future. His wife should remain nothing to you. Not the jerk. The part about being sold already. This was planned. This was about money. A 14-year-old knows better than to steal someone's hard work and sell it. As a plant lover myself, I'm so sorry this happened to you. It must have been horrible. Not the jerk. Some of those plants can cost or bring in several $100s. I have lots of plants as well. Most were under $30. If anyone cut them up, I would freak out. I've put so much care and time into them that it would feel disrespectful. It's a form of stealing. Also, I understand my plants, and if or when they are ready to propagate and how to do so without causing issues to them. I would kick anyone out who messed with my plants. I would never let them back in. Well, what do you think? Did OP overreact or not? Please let us know.
If Reddit boy touched my plants, he'd need a new head.
I just wanted a drill, not a police report. Alright, so a little backstory. This happened about 4 months ago. I had just finished an 11-hour shift and needed to stop at Home Depot to get a new drill. I just wanted to run in, buy it, run out, and get home. Of course, it wasn't that easy. I had just gotten to the drills and was looking over the options in my price range when I hear it. Excuse me, where are the wax toilet rings? There are a few other people in the area, so I ignore it, assuming there's an employee nearby. It's important to add, as I work in traffic control and just got off the job site, I'm wearing high-visibility pants, a high-visibility vest shirt that says company name Traffic Control on the back, a radio with a shoulder mic, and I have a traffic control technician certification card displayed on my vest. The employees here wear orange aprons and normal clothes. Hello? Do you want to do your job or just stand there looking at tools? At this point, I glanced around to see what was going on. I assumed some customer was berating an employee, which happens a lot at this location, unfortunately. I was surprised, however, to see some 30-year-old guy in a white button-down shirt and tie looking at me like I'm stupid. Can I help you? I said, still not sure of the situation, but that seemed to tick him off. Yes, you. Can you tell me where the darn wax rings are? He shouted. At this point, it clicked in my head what was going on. I'm sorry, sir, I started saying. I don't want to hear anything but an aisle number, he yelled, interrupting me and drawing the attention of a few other shoppers. Honestly, how did you get this job being so stupid? I tried again. I don't work, he cuts me off again. Oh my god, why is this so hard? Where are the wax rings? Now, I don't know why, but I got an idea in my head that I thought would be amusing. and at the very least might get him away from me. I pointed behind him at a random aisle where wax rings almost certainly weren't in and said, "It's right there."
"Finally! How stupid can you be?"
he yelled, huffing and storming off. I thought that was the end of it. I figured he'd realize they're not in that aisle and then find an actual employee to ask. Nope. He came right back and started yelling that I don't even know how to do my job and that his best friend is the district manager and he'll have my job. During his yelling, I noticed a few shoppers staring at us. I just raised my hand, pointed to the same aisle as before and said, "They're right there. Look, can't you see them? How stupid can you be?" I retorted, taking glee and throwing the last part back at him. But he wasn't amused. He smacked my hand down and shoved me, yelling something about stupid punk teenagers. That was a bad idea. I'm not a skilled fighter or super strong or anything, but I know when I can take someone. This guy clearly didn't. I bopped him once in the nose and he fell back, falling on the ground hard.
"Someone call the police! This guy just attacked me!"
he yelled as the crowd nearby grew larger and larger. I was worried. Obviously, it was in self-defense, but I kept thinking that I should have shoved him back and not bopped him. I was worried that if he had fallen so hard that he had been hurt, I could get in trouble. A manager came over and asked what was going on. He started screaming that,
"This employee attacked me when I tried to ask for simple directions. Look what he did."
By this point, you can see that he's really hurt. "Who did?" the manager said, puzzled and concerned, looking around at the actual employees who were still on their way to the commotion.
"Oh my God, are you all this stupid? Him!"
he screamed, pointing at me. He doesn't work here, sir," the manager said. The manager got on the radio for more employees, ignoring the man's insistence that I do, and tells me to follow him. He takes me to the security office and has me wait for the police. Luckily, multiple customers and the cameras saw my side of the story, and since the police went to the injured person first to render aid, they also interviewed witnesses over there before coming to me. When they came in, I gave my side of the story. The police say it contradicts his version of events and that it matches the witness statements. They said the guy was yelling that he wanted me arrested and locked up. That's when the manager pulled up the footage, which showed him hit my hand and shove me, and I only bopped him after that and one time. Also in my favor, I was facing him with the drill shelf behind me when he shoved me, so I was somewhat cornered. They then asked if I wanted to press charges, and since he wanted to get me arrested, I decided, yeah, lock him up. They arrested him, and a few months later I found out he pled guilty and avoided jail time, but now he has an assault charge on his record. I honestly wouldn't have pressed charges if it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to press charges against me. I hope he learned his lesson and doesn't treat anyone that way again, even if they're a Home Depot employee. Always press charges. It teaches entitled people to keep their hands to themselves. Can't do anything much about their idiotic words, but when they decide to put their hands on you, then lessons need to be learned. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.